Before we jump in, make sure you hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always wild to see how far these stories travel. All right, let's get into it. At this year's Christmas dinner, my family called me worthless, right after I'd spent years funding their lives. What they didn't know was that I had a special gift for them this time, a folder full of evidence that would get my brother arrested by the end of the night, and a legal notice that would get my parents evicted from the house I owned by the new year. This is the story of how I finally got my revenge. For as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one. It wasn't a title I wanted. It was just handed to me the second my younger brother, Mark, was born. He was the dreamer, the charmer, the guy with a new $1 million idea every week. I was the plotter. I got a sensible degree, a stable job with a good salary and a quiet life. My parents saw Mark's chaotic energy as potential. They saw my stability as a resource, a family resource. My bank account wasn't really mine. It was the family's emergency fund, their investment capital and their safety net, all rolled into one. It started small, like these things always do. A few $100 to cover Mark's rent when another one of his brilliant schemes went bust. $1,000 for a car repair my dad couldn't afford. They were always called loans, of course, but the repayment date was always a moving target, forever pushed back by the next unforeseen crisis. Over time, the requests got bolder. The unspoken expectation became a concrete demand. I wasn't just helping out anymore. I was bankrolling their lives. Mark decided he was an entrepreneur, not the kind that grinds in a garage for years, but the kind who needs a constant flow of cash to look like a successful founder. First, it was 10 grand for a revolutionary app. The app never happened, but Mark's Instagram was suddenly full of pictures from a tech conference in Austin, complete with bottle service at a nightclub. Then it was 20 grand for a dropshipping business. The products never shipped, but Mark bought a new car. Each failure was never his fault. It was the market, the developers, the supply chain. And each time my parents would sit me down, their faces etched with practiced concern. "He's so close this time," my mom would say. "He just needs a little more runway. You can't let him fail now." My dad was the enforcer. He'd hit me with a mix of guilt and dismissal. "It's just money," he'd scoff, as if my 40-hour workweeks and missed vacations were nothing. "Family is what's important. We have to support each other." But in their dictionary, support was a one-way street flowing directly from my bank account to their whims. My own life was an afterthought. My accomplishments got polite, empty smiles. When I got a huge promotion, my father's only comment was, "Well, that'll make things a bit easier for Mark, won't it?" My birthday was usually a rushed card with a $20 bill inside, a cruel irony they seemed to miss, while Mark's was a week-long celebration, often funded by a loan I'd given them just days before. The biggest drain was the house. About 10 years ago, my parents were on the brink of foreclosure. They were devastated. Mark, of course, was nowhere to be seen. He was off the grid for some new venture, so I stepped in. I took my entire life savings, every penny I had squirreled away from my own place, and I bought their house. We sat down with my lawyer and the terms were crystal clear. The deed was in my name, only my name. They would live there rent-free for as long as they needed. I told myself it was an act of love. It's what a good son does. But over the years, it's like they developed a convenient amnesia. They started calling it their house. They redecorated, hosted parties, and complained about property taxes as if they were the ones paying them. My ownership became an inconvenient little fact they all just chose to forget. I wasn't their savior anymore. I was just the guy whose name was on some paperwork. My role was set in stone. I was the ATM. And for the longest time, I just let it happen. I told myself it was easier than fighting. I told myself it was my duty. I was so wrong. Christmas in my family has always been a performance. A play of forced smiles and fake cheer, with all the resentment simmering just below the surface. This year was no different. The air in my parents' house, the house I paid for, was thick with the smell of pine and tension. I'd started pulling back recently, setting small boundaries that were met with cold shoulders and passive-aggressive comments. The river of easy money had slowed to a trickle, and they were not happy about it. Dinner was a masterclass in petty cruelty. My mother served the roast, making a whole show of it. My dad got the perfect, rosy end cut. Mark got a thick, juicy center slice. When she got to me, she scraped the overcooked gray remnants from the side of the pan onto my plate. "Oh, sorry," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Looks like you got the last bit. Hope you like it well done." A classic move, a small, deniable jab disguised as an accident. The conversation, as always, circled back to Mark. His latest venture was some crypto scheme that was, in his words, guaranteed to moon. He threw around a bunch of buzzwords, decentralization, blockchain, NFTs, that he didn't understand, but they sounded impressive to my parents. I just stayed quiet, pushing the dry meat around my plate. I knew what was coming. It always did. "The thing is," Mark said, leaning forward, "we're in the final pre-launch phase. I've got big investors lined up, but to secure the funding, I need to show a little more liquidity." He looked right at me, a predator's gleam in his eye. I was thinking, a small bridge loan, 50,000 just for a month. You'll get it back double guaranteed. A year ago, I would have sighed and eventually caved after a week of guilt-tripping calls from my mom. But something in me had finally hardened. The constant disrespect, the entitlement, it had formed a core of resolve. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Mark blinked, genuinely shocked. He wasn't used to that word. "What do you mean, no, it's a sure thing?" "I mean no," I repeated, looking him dead in the eye. "The bank is closed permanently." The room exploded. It was like I'd chucked a grenade on the table. My mother's face twisted in outrage. "How can you be so selfish?" she gasped. "After everything we've done for you, this is your brother." "What have you done for me?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You live in my house for free. I've paid your bills for a decade. I have funded every single one of his failed projects. So what have you done for me?" My father slammed his hand on the table. "Don't you take that tone. All this money has made you cold." But it was Mark who delivered the final blow. He let out a short, sharp, ugly laugh. He looked me up and down like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. "You know what your problem is," he sneered. "For all that money you're so proud of, you're still worthless. You have no life. No wife, no kids. All you have is your job. We," he said, gesturing to himself and my parents, "are the only ones who even bother to put up with you. Without us, you're nothing." And that was it, the snap, but it wasn't loud. It was a moment of absolute chilling clarity. It wasn't anger that washed over me, it was peace. The peace that comes from finally accepting a truth you've been avoiding for years. They didn't love me. They didn't even like me. I was an appliance. A function. I looked at their three faces, twisted with rage, and I saw them for what they really were, parasites. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just picked up my fork, took a bite of the burnt meat, and chewed slowly. I ate in silence while they continued to yell, their words just washing over me. In that moment, I decided I was done. This wasn't just about cutting them off anymore. It was about cutting them out. Completely. The year that followed was all about quiet, careful planning. On the surface, I just went distant. I didn't answer their calls, which went from furious rants to sickeningly sweet attempts at manipulation. I replied to my mom's guilt-trip emails with one-word answers. They thought I was sulking, like a child who needed to be taught a lesson. They had no idea I was waging a war. The day after Christmas, I contacted a lawyer. Her name was Laura, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family and financial disputes. I sat in her office and laid out the whole ugly history. I just stated the facts, the transactions, the broken promises. She listened, and when I was done, she looked at me over her glasses. "This isn't just a family squabble," she said. "Based on what you're describing, this could be fraud, possibly wire fraud." The words just hung there in the air. She recommended we bring in a specialist. That's how I met David, a forensic accountant. He was a soft-spoken guy who seemed more like a librarian than a detective. For the next several months, I lived a double life. By day, I was a project manager. By night, I was digging through a decade of my own financial ruin. I compiled every bank transfer, every email, every text. The "I'll pay you back next month" texts. The "this is a guaranteed 200% return" emails. The desperate voicemails from my mom about a bill, followed by social media posts of her and my dad on a weekend trip a week later. It was a mountain of digital betrayal, and I cataloged every last piece. I handed it all over to David. He worked for 2 months, quietly tracing every dollar. The picture he painted was way darker than I ever imagined. Mark wasn't just a bad entrepreneur, he was a con artist. The 20 grand for inventory, traced directly to a down payment on his sports car. The 50 grand for software development, funneled through 3 different accounts before landing in an online poker site, where he lost it all in under a week. He was creating fake invoices from non-existent companies to justify his requests. He was running a small-scale Ponzi scheme. It was a pattern of deliberate criminal fraud. While David built the case against Mark, Laura worked on the house. She drafted the official eviction notice. It was a cold, legal document. We compiled every piece of paperwork: the original purchase agreement, the deed, 10 years of property tax bills paid from my bank account. There was no loophole. The house was mine. Their right to live in it was a privilege I had granted, and one I was now legally taking back. The final step was the folder, a thick black 3-ring binder. It was my masterpiece of revenge. The first section was David's full report, with charts tracing the money's journey from my account to Mark's pockets. The second had copies of Mark's fraudulent invoices. The third was a curated collection of their texts and emails, the promises, the guilt trips, the lies. The fourth section was a summary of the potential criminal charges Mark was facing, drafted by Laura. And slipped right in the front sleeve was the eviction notice. Holding it, I felt strangely detached. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about consequences. They had written this story. I was just getting ready to read it back to them. The next Christmas, I accepted my mother's invitation. Her phone call was syrupy sweet, all about letting bygones be bygones. The year of my silence had clearly unnerved them, but not enough to actually reflect. They just wanted their ATM back. As I drove to the house, the black folder sat on the passenger seat, cold and heavy. When I walked in, the mood was tense and fake. My mother hugged me too tightly. My father gave me a slap on the back that felt more like a punch. Mark, smug as ever, greeted me with a grin, like our last conversation never happened. He was wearing a ridiculously expensive watch that I knew had been bought with money for server costs. Dinner was a repeat of last year, only this time I got a decent cut of meat. They were on their best behavior, trying to lure me back in. I played along, keeping my answers short. I was a coiled spring. After the main course, just as my mom was about to get dessert, I cleared my throat. "Before we do that," I said, my voice steady, "I have some gifts." I stood up, walked to my bag, and grabbed the folder. I placed it on the center of the table with a solid thud. The sound silenced the room. "What's this?" my father asked, his voice sharp. "I'm glad you asked," I said, opening the binder. "Last year at this table I was called worthless, After funding this family for over a decade, it made me wonder what my worthless money had actually paid for. So I found out. This, I said, patting the cover, is the audit. I started calmly, turning the pages one by one. Mark, let's start with you. In March, you asked for $20,000 for critical inventory acquisition. I turned the folder to face him, showing him a bank statement next to a bill of sale for a sports car, dated 2 days later. It seems that critical inventory was a red convertible. His face went from smug to confused. I don't know what that is. That's not right. Oh, it's right, I continued, turning the page. And the $50,000 for software development in July. My forensic accountant traced that through 3 shell accounts right into your online gambling account. You lost it all in 48 hours. Here are the transaction logs. His face was starting to go pale. I didn't stop. I walked them through the fake invoices, the fabricated profit statements, the whole web of lies. I used the words Laura had taught me: wire fraud, money laundering, felony theft. With each page, the air grew colder. My mother started to tremble. My father's face was a thundercloud. Mark was frozen, his skin a pasty white. Then I turned to my parents. And you too, I said, my voice losing its calm for just a second. You enabled him. You guilted me and shamed me at every turn. You were his accomplices. You called it supporting family, but you knew. You had to have known. You just didn't care where the money came from as long as it kept flowing. I saved the best for last. I pulled the eviction notice from the front of the binder and placed it gently in front of my father. And speaking of support, let's talk about this house. The house I own. The one you've lived in rent-free for 10 years, all while pretending it was yours. I let that sink in. As the owner, I'm terminating your tenancy. This is a legal notice to vacate. You have until January 31st. That's when the dam broke. My mother let out a strangled wail. You can't do this. We have nowhere to go. You're throwing your own pa. Rent's out on the street. My father shot to his feet, his face purple with rage. You ungrateful bastard. You destroy your family over money. No, I said, standing to face him. I'm not destroying it. You three already did that. This is just the bill coming due. And as for Mark's business dealings, well, that sort of thing attracts attention. The authorities were very interested in my findings. In fact, I said, glancing at my watch, I believe they had a few questions for Mark. They said they'd be stopping by around 9. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, 2 sharp, clear chimes. A stunned silence fell over the room. No one moved. I walked to the door and opened it. 2 uniformed police officers stood on the porch. Good evening, I said calmly. We were expecting you. He's in the dining room. The scene that followed was surreal. As the officers stepped inside, my family's world just shattered. Mark was catatonic, staring with wide eyes as they approached him, stated his name, and told him he was under arrest. One of the officers read him his rights, the familiar words sounding brutal in the festive dining room. My mother's wailing became incoherent shrieks, pleading with the officers, with me, with anyone. It's a mistake. He didn't do anything. Tell them you're lying. My father, after a moment of shock, lunged at me, his face a mask of pure hate. The second officer easily blocked him. Sir, I need you to calm down. My father sputtered, pointing a trembling finger at me. He did this. It's his fault. He's tearing our family apart. I didn't say a word. I just watched them handcuff my brother, his stupidly expensive watch glinting under the chandelier. I saw the moment the reality finally hit Mark. His shoulders just slumped. As they let him out, my mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. My father just stood there, breathing heavily, staring at me with a look of such venom it was almost cleansing. It was the truth, finally. No more pretense. Just pure, unfiltered hate. I turned, grabbed my coat, and walked out without looking back. I walked calmly to my car, got in, and shut the door. The silence in the car was absolute. I sat there for a long moment, my hands on the steering wheel, and I felt nothing. Not triumph, not sadness, just a profound, hollow emptiness. The calm after the storm. Then my phone buzzed, a text from my mom. "You have destroyed this family. You have ruined Christmas forever. You are dead to us." Another buzz, my father. "I hope you're happy. You'll rot in hell." Another, an aunt who had obviously gotten a frantic call. "I can't believe you would be so cruel." I pulled over to the side of the road. One by one, I opened their contacts. My mother, block. My father, block. Mark, block. My aunt, block. With each tap of the screen, I felt a weight lifting. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was peace. It was freedom. If you have a story about finally standing up for yourself, I really want to hear it. Share your experience in the comments below. And if you want more stories about consequences and justice, make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's been 6 months since that Christmas. I sold the house. Mark's legal troubles are ongoing, but it looks like he's going to take a plea deal. He's facing several years in prison. My parents moved into a small rental apartment across town. I haven't spoken to a single one of them since that night. I've heard through the grapevine that they tell everyone a heavily edited version of the story, where I'm the cold-hearted villain who betrayed his family for money. I let them. Their opinions are no longer my problem. The revenge, I've realized, wasn't the arrest or the eviction. Those were just tools. The real revenge was the quiet act of choosing myself. It was the moment I decided my own peace was more valuable than their comfort. For years, they defined my worth by what I could give them. The real victory was realizing my worth was never theirs to define in the first place. I'm not an ATM. I'm not a resource. I'm not their safety net. I'm free. And that's a gift I gave myself. The night my parents threw me out into the biting -10-degree cold of Christmas Eve, it wasn't because I'd broken a rule. It wasn't for some huge screw-up or teenage rebellion. It was so my brother's new girlfriend could have my bed. My father, the man who was supposed to protect me, handed me my winter coat, not as a kindness, but as a final get out. "You have a choice," he'd said, his voice as cold as the air outside. "Her comfort or your stubbornness." The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, sealing me out of the warm, festive light of my own home. Through the frosted glass of the living room window, I could see the glittering Christmas tree, hear the faint echo of laughter, and see my mother already fluffing the pillows on my bed for a complete stranger. I was 18 years old and I was disposable. Standing there, shivering in the dark with nothing but my phone and the wallet in my pocket, I didn't just feel the cold seeping into my bones. I felt a promise forming in my heart. One day they would want something from me, and on that day I would remember the feeling of being frozen out for the golden child. I'd remember this Christmas, and I would take everything. This wasn't a sudden storm. It was the result of a lifetime of being treated like I was in the way. My brother, Liam, was 2 years older, and from the moment he was born, he was the sun our family orbited around. I was Pluto, distant, cold, and barely there. The favoritism was a constant smog in our home, so thick you could taste it. It wasn't just about big things. It was 1,000 tiny cuts, daily reminders that I came second. I remember being in 4th grade. There was a statewide social studies competition, and the final project was a diorama of a big historical event. I chose the moon landing. For 3 weeks I was obsessed. I spent my allowance on model rocket parts and tiny astronaut figures. I used my dad's old modeling paints to get the lunar surface just right, a mix of gray, black, and shimmering silver. I even built a tiny American flag out of a toothpick and a scrap of fabric. And I have to say, it was a masterpiece. It won first place in my school, and I was headed to the state finals. I was on top of the world. For the first time, I felt like I had something that was just mine, something where I'd outshone everyone, including Liam. The night before the state competition, I placed it carefully on the dining room table, all ready for the morning. That evening, Liam had friends over. They were being loud, chasing each other through the house. My mom told them to take it easy, but she had this fond, exasperated smile on her face. I went to bed, my stomach fluttering with nerves and excitement. The next morning, I came downstairs to find my moon landing in ruins. The model lander was crushed, the astronauts were scattered, and the carefully painted surface was just a smeared, broken mess. Liam was sitting at the table, staring at the wreckage with a guilty look. He'd accidentally fallen on it while they were playing. I didn't even get a chance to cry. Before a single tear could fall, my mother was rushing to Liam's side, hugging him. "Oh, honey, it was an accident," she cooed. "Don't be so upset." My father clapped him on the shoulder. "It's just a school project, son. We know you didn't mean it." I just stood there, my voice stuck in my throat, looking at the debris of all my hard work. When I finally found my voice and whispered, "But the competition is today," my father turned to me, his expression hard. "Don't you dare make your brother feel worse than he already does," he said sternly. "It was an accident. Be the bigger person and let it go." I didn't go to the competition. My teacher was disappointed. My parents never mentioned it again. Liam got taken out for ice cream that afternoon to cheer him up. This kind of thing happened all the time. My 13th birthday was a perfect example. All I wanted was a small slumber party with my 3 best friends. We'd watch movies, eat junk food, and stay up all night talking. Simple, classic. My parents agreed. But as the date got closer, the plan started to change. Liam's birthday was 6 months away, but my mother had a brilliant idea. "Why don't we just do a big combined party?" she suggested. "We can celebrate Liam's half-birthday. It'll be so much more fun." I protested, but my voice was a whisper against the hurricane of their excitement. My small slumber party for 4 girls turned into a massive backyard barbecue for 50 people. My 3 friends came, but they were swallowed up in a sea of Liam's loud high school friends. The music was his. The conversations were all about his football games, his friends, his life. My parents bought a huge cake that said, "Happy birthday, Sarah, and happy half-birthday, Liam." My name felt like an afterthought. I ended up hiding in my room for most of my own party, listening to the thumping bass of Liam's music. My friends texted asking where I was. Later that night, my mom knocked on the door. "Everyone had such a wonderful time," she said, beaming. "Aren't you glad we did it this way?" The differences only got bigger as we got older. On his 17th birthday, a brand new cherry red convertible was parked in the driveway with a giant bow on it. My dad made a big speech about how a young man needs a reliable car. A year later, on my 17th birthday, I got a city bus pass and a crisp $10 bill. "This will teach you responsibility," my dad said, as if I hadn't been working a part-time job for a year already. The family's second car, a sensible sedan, was almost exclusively for Liam. He needed it for social engagements and to drive to the community college he was barely attending. The one time I asked to borrow it for a huge job interview, I was told Liam might need it to go to the gym and his fitness was important. I took the bus, was late, and didn't get the job. The final nail in the coffin was college. I worked my tail off in high school. I got good grades, did the extracurriculars. I did everything you're supposed to do. I dreamed of going to a good university, studying business, and building something for myself. I just assumed there was a college fund somewhere. When I sat them down to talk about applications, the truth came out. There was no money for me. The joint college account had been slowly drained over the years to bankroll Liam's entrepreneurial ventures. These included a failed attempt at being a DJ, which required thousands in equipment, a t-shirt business that produced maybe 50 shirts before he got bored, and a disastrous shot at day trading with my dad's money. Liam is a risk taker, an innovator, my father explained, like he was talking about the next Steve Jobs. Those were investments in his future. And me. You're smart, Sarah, my mother said, patting my hand. You'll get scholarships, or you can take out loans. It builds character. That brings us back to that last Christmas. I was 18 in my first semester of community college, living at home to save money for the university I was determined to transfer to. Liam, now 20, had a new girlfriend, Jessica. In my parents' eyes, she was perfect. She laughed at my dad's bad jokes, raved about my mom's cooking, and looked at Liam like he'd personally hung the moon. The family was obsessed with making a good impression. The trouble started on December 23rd. Sarah, honey, my mom said, trapping me in the kitchen. Jessica is staying over for Christmas Eve. We thought it would be lovely if she could have your room. It's the guest room, really, and it gets the nice morning light. You can just sleep on the couch. The guest room. It had been my bedroom for 18 years. The couch, I asked, completely baffled. I have a final exam to study for. I need my desk. My mother's face tightened. Don't be difficult, Sarah. It's for one night. Don't you want to make Jessica feel welcome? Don't ruin Christmas over something so silly. Something inside me, worn thin from years of being pushed aside, just snapped. No, I said. It was a quiet word, but it felt like a bomb went off. No, it's my room. Liam and Jessica can have the couch. The argument blew up with stunning speed. My mother called me selfish and ungrateful. I told her I was tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own home. My father overheard. He didn't ask for my side. He didn't try to play peacemaker. He just came in, his face a thundercloud, and sided with them. She is our guest, he boomed, pointing a finger at me. He is your brother. This isn't a democracy. You will give her the room, or you will find another place to stay tonight. I looked at him, at his unflinching anger. I looked at my mother, who was now tearfully telling him how I was ruining everything. And I made a decision. Fine, I said, my voice shaking with fear and adrenaline. I'll find another place to stay. I think they thought I was bluffing, that I'd have a tantrum and then give in like I always did. But I turned and walked to my room, grabbing my purse and phone. They followed me. From the living room, I could see Liam and Jessica on the couch. He had a smug, triumphant smirk on his face. She just looked down, a silent partner in all of it. That's when my father walked to the hall closet, pulled out my heavy winter coat and held it out for me. If you're going to be a martyr, you might as well be warm, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. My mother didn't say a word. She just walked past me into my bedroom, and I heard her start changing the sheets on my bed. My father opened the front door. The blast of frigid air was a shock. You have until we finish dinner to change your mind and apologize, he said. But I knew it wasn't an offer. It was a threat. As the door clicked shut, plunging me into the silent, freezing dark, I knew I would never apologize. I would never be back. They had made their choice. Now I would make mine. The cold was a physical attack. It was so vicious it stole my breath and made my eyes water. The flimsy coat my father had shoved at me felt like paper against the wind. -10 degrees wasn't just a number. It was a predator. For a few minutes I just stood on the porch, paralyzed by shock and the sheer force of the cold. The warm, yellow light from their home seemed to mock me. I could see their silhouettes moving inside, getting ready for a Christmas Eve dinner that I wasn't a part of. My first thought was to call my best friend, Amy. I scrolled to her name, my fingers already stiff. She answered, her voice bubbly with holiday cheer. "Merry Christmas Eve," she chirped. Behind her, I could hear a storm of happy noises, her family laughing, music playing. My throat closed up. How could I drop my pathetic, freezing tragedy into her perfect holiday? "Hey," I croaked, my voice barely recognizable. "Just wanted to say Merry Christmas Eve." We exchanged a few pleasantries, and I hung up. feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. Panic started to creep in. I had about 60 bucks in my wallet and a dying phone. The idea of sleeping at a bus stop was terrifying. Shivering uncontrollably, I just started walking to generate some heat, with no clue where I was going. I ended up at a 24-hour diner a few miles from my house. The blast of warm, greasy air when I opened the door felt like heaven. I slid into a booth, ordered a single cup of coffee, and tried to make it last, cradling the warm mug like a lifeline. As I sat there, a memory popped into my head. My Uncle Michael, my dad's younger brother. He'd always been the black sheep, the one who saw right through my parents' act. He once pulled me aside when I was 15 and said, "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Sarah. Don't let them grind you down." With a surge of desperate hope, I found his number and called. It was late, but he answered. The moment I heard his voice, the dam broke. I just started sobbing, trying to explain between gasps what had happened. He just listened. When I was finished, he was quiet for a second, and then he said, his voice tight with anger, "That man is not my brother. Stay right where you are. I'm wiring you money and booking you a motel room for a week. We'll figure this out." An hour later, I was checked into a cheap but clean motel a few towns over. My uncle had sent me $1,000. It felt like a million. Lying in that sterile, anonymous bed, I felt safe for the first time in hours. The next morning, Christmas Day, my phone started blowing up. A text from my mom. "Okay, you've made your point. Your father is sorry. Please come home. You're ruining Christmas." A text from my dad. "This childish tantrum has gone on long enough. Get home now." And the one that really sealed the deal from Liam. "Seriously, what is wrong with you? You freaked Jessica out. Now she thinks my family is crazy. Thanks a lot." Not one of them asked if I was okay. Not a single real apology. It was all about them, their Christmas, their reputation, their convenience. With a strange sense of calm, I blocked their numbers. My mother, my father, my brother. One by one. Then I blocked them on social media. I built a digital wall between my past and my future. The silence was terrifying, but it was also the sound of freedom. I used the money from my uncle to find a tiny basement apartment that smelled like damp earth. It was a shoebox, but it was mine. I found 2 jobs. From 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., I was a waitress at a diner. From 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., I stocked shelves at a grocery store. In between, I slept and took online classes at the community college, studying logistics and supply chain management. It was methodical, logical, and controllable, everything my childhood wasn't. Those first couple of years were a brutal grind. I was always exhausted. I lived on instant noodles and leftover bread from the diner. Some nights I'd get back to my damp little apartment and just cry from loneliness and exhaustion. I'd scroll through social media on a fake account and see pictures of my old family. A ski trip to Aspen, a sunny vacation, a glowing post from my mother about how proud she was of Liam for finding his passion again, this time in real estate. Each picture was a fresh stab of pain, but it also fueled the fire inside me. The pain wasn't just something to get through, it was something to use. My turning point came from an adjunct professor for one of my online courses, a man named Mr. Abernathy. He noticed my work was always meticulously detailed, my analysis sharp. He saw something in me. He set up a video call and told me I had a natural talent for untangling complex systems. He said he had a friend who ran a small logistics company and thought I'd be perfect for an internship. That internship was my ladder out of the basement. I threw myself into it with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. While other interns did the bare minimum, I stayed late, read industry journals, and created new efficiency plans on my own time. I was a sponge. My boss, a gruff but fair man named Frank, noticed. After the internship, he offered me a full-time, salaried position as a junior logistics coordinator. For the first time since I left home, I could actually breathe. I quit the overnight stocking job, then the diner. I moved into a better apartment, one that didn't smell like mildew. I finished my degree with my company's help. I got promoted, then promoted again. I became the person who could solve impossible shipping problems. Need to get fragile medical equipment across 3 continents on a tight deadline. Call Sarah. Need to redesign a warehouse for maximum efficiency. Call Sarah. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. After 5 years, having risen to senior management, I saw my opening. The industry was dominated by huge, inflexible corporations. There was a niche for a boutique consulting firm that specialized in complex, high-value logistics for art galleries, biotech firms, you name it. It was a huge risk. I had savings, but not enough. I wrote a 100-page business plan, detailed down to the cost of paper clips, and secured a small business loan based on my reputation. At 28 years old, 10 years after that freezing Christmas Eve, I was the founder and CEO of my own successful logistics firm. The first 2 years were lean and filled with 80-hour work weeks. But then it took off. I landed a contract with a major art auction house, then a biotech firm. My company grew, and so did my wealth. I moved from an apartment to a downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows. I drove a sleek black German sedan that was worth more than the down payment on my parents' house. The pain of the past was still there, a little pilot light always burning, but it no longer controlled me. It was just fuel. For a decade there was silence, a complete void. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, an email slipped past my corporate filters and landed in my inbox. The subject line was simple: from your mother. I just stared at it. My finger hovered over the delete button. A decade of discipline screamed at me to just get rid of it. But curiosity, a much colder emotion, won out. I opened it. The email was a masterclass in manipulation. It started with a long, rambling paragraph about how much they missed me, how they thought of me every day, how a part of their hearts had been missing for 10 years. She wrote about seeing a woman who looked like me on the street and bursting into tears. It was all so tragic, and I felt absolutely nothing. Then, just as I knew it would, the email got to the point. The real reason for this sudden contact emerged from the fog of fake nostalgia. It was about Liam. The golden child had finally tarnished. After his failed real estate career, he had convinced my father to make him a full partner in the family's modest construction company. My father, blinded by favoritism, had agreed. It was an epic disaster. Liam, with his big ideas and zero business sense, had bid on projects they couldn't handle, undercutting competitors to win contracts, and then realizing they were losing money on them. Worse, he had been embezzling company funds to pay for the lavish lifestyle he and his wife, Jessica, had gotten used to: luxury cars, expensive vacations, designer clothes. The company was hemorrhaging money. To cover the losses and Liam's theft, my parents had taken out a second, then a third mortgage on the family home, the very home they had thrown me out of. Now, the construction company was about to collapse, and the bank was getting ready to foreclose on the house. Their perfect world was crumbling. The final paragraph was the punchline I had been waiting 10 years to hear. "We know you've done so well for yourself, Sarah," my mother wrote. I could almost hear the cloying sweetness in her voice. "We saw an article about your company. You're so successful and we are so proud, but we are in trouble. We are your family and we are desperate. We need your help. A loan, just something to get us back on our feet, to save the house. Please, Sarah, don't let your father and me be put out on the street." I read the email 3 times. The first time I felt a ghost of the hurt little girl I used to be. The second time I felt a grim satisfaction. The third time I felt only a cold, crystalline clarity. This wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was a business proposal. They had an asset I wanted, their misery. and I was about to make the acquisition of a lifetime. I didn't reply to the email. I just picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "I have a new project for us," I said. "A personal one." My revenge wasn't going to be a screaming match. That was their style. Mine was going to be silent, methodical, and absolute. It was just going to be business. First step, information. I hired the best private investigator and forensic accounting firm in the city. "I want to know everything," I told them. "Every debt, every asset, every mistake." 2 weeks later, a binder 3 inches thick landed on my desk. It was far worse than my mother's email had let on. Liam's fraud was extensive. The company's liabilities were staggering. The report noted that the bank holding their loans would probably be happy to sell the whole toxic mess at a steep discount. The plan formed in my mind, elegant and brutal. My legal team set up a maze of anonymous shell corporations. Through one of them, my lawyers started negotiating with the bank. Just as the report predicted, the bank was eager to get the bad loans off its books. They had no idea they were dealing with me. They just saw a faceless firm willing to take the risk. For 55 cents on the dollar, I bought all of their debt. Just like that, I owned the mortgage on my childhood home. I was the bank. At the same time, a second anonymous company made a formal offer to buy the construction company's assets. The offer was insultingly low, but it came with a catch. The buyer would assume the business's immediate debts, shielding my father from personal liability and, more importantly, from legal trouble over Liam's fraud. Desperate and humiliated, my father signed the papers. He sold his life's work to a ghost, thinking he was saving himself. He had no idea he was handing the keys to the daughter he had cast out. For 3 weeks I did nothing. I let the silence stretch. I pictured their growing panic. Another email arrived from my mother. "Sarah, please, we are begging you. The bank isn't talking to us anymore. We got a letter about the company being sold. We don't know what's happening. Please just call us." I archived it. Then, when all the ink was dry, I gave the order. My lawyers sent the official notices. The first was a formal notice of foreclosure, informing Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Clark that their new lender was calling in the loan, and they had 30 days to vacate. The second was a letter informing my father that Clark Construction was being dissolved, and his position was terminated. Their world imploded. The frantic, terrified calls started pouring into my lawyer's office. They demanded a meeting with the new owner. After a week of their begging, I agreed. I had my assistant book the largest conference room in my office, the one with the panoramic city view and the long, intimidating mahogany table. I made them wait. For 20 full minutes they sat in that glass-walled room, my father looking 10 years older, my mother wringing her hands, and between them Liam looking sullen and defiant. Finally, I walked in. I wore a sharply tailored black suit, my heels clicking on the polished floor. The moment they saw me, their faces were a symphony of shock, confusion, and dawning horror. My father's jaw went slack. My mother let out a small, strangled gasp. Liam's face went from pale to a blotchy, furious red. "You," he choked out, standing up so fast his chair scraped loudly. "You did this." I ignored him. I walked to the head of the table and placed a leather folder in front of me. I looked at each of them, my gaze as cold and empty as the winter sky they'd thrown me under. "Please, sit down," I said. It wasn't a request. I opened the folder. "Let's review," I began, my voice even and professional. "As of 2 weeks ago, my firm acquired your outstanding mortgage debt. As you were in default, we have initiated foreclosure proceedings. You will vacate the premises in 14 days. I slid a document across the table. "Also," I continued, "another of my companies has acquired the assets of Clark Construction. The decision has been made to liquidate. The company is no longer a going concern." I slid a second document over. It's all perfectly legal, just business. My mother started to sob. Sarah, how could you? We're your family. I finally met her eyes. You told me not to ruin Christmas. I think waiting 10 years to ruin your lives showed considerable restraint. You wanted me to make a good impression on Jessica. I hope this one is memorable. I then turned to my father. He was just staring at me. You taught me a very valuable lesson that night, I said, my voice dangerously soft. When someone becomes a liability, you cut them loose. You handed me my coat and showed me the door. I'm just applying your business model to your life. Liam finally exploded. You vindictive witch. You were always jealous of me. I almost laughed. Jealous? No, Liam, I'm grateful. Your endless failures, funded by their blind devotion, created this opportunity. You finally got what you always wanted. Everything that was theirs is gone because of you. It's just not asterisk for asterisk you. By the way, your name was all over the company bank statements. The fraudulent withdrawals. I've passed that information on to the relevant authorities. I don't own the company anymore, so I have no reason to protect you. That shut him up. The color drained from his face. They started to beg then, pleading for mercy for another chance, spilling out apologies that were a decade late and $1 million short. I let them talk, listening to the pathetic sound of their desperation. Then I stood up. The terms are on the paper, I said, looking at a point on the wall behind them. My lawyer will handle the rest of the transition. He'll be in touch about the eviction date. Please see yourselves out. I turned and walked out of the conference room without a single look back, the sound of my mother's weeping fading behind me. It's been 6 months since I finalized the demolition of their lives. I never saw or spoke to them again. My lawyer handled everything. They left the house on the final day, stripping it of all warmth. The question I got most from my lawyer, my uncle, the few friends who knew the whole story, was what I would do with everything. What would I do with the house? For a while I thought about keeping it, sleeping in the master bedroom as a final act of triumph. But when I walked through it one last time, all I felt were cold ghosts. The memories were tainted, so I sold it. The market was strong, and the entire proceeds, down to the last penny, were donated to a national charity that provides shelter for homeless and at-risk youth. I liked the poetry of that. The house that was the site of my rejection would now be a source of safety for other kids who had been cast out. The assets from the construction company were liquidated. After paying off the creditors Liam had stiffed, there was a tidy sum left over. I used it to start a foundation that provides scholarships for young women entering business and logistics. My revenge was never about the money. It was about balancing the books. It was about showing them that actions have consequences, that you can't just throw a person away. It was closing a chapter. The revenge is over now, and it doesn't define me. My life is defined by the world I built from the ashes of the one I was exiled from. It's defined by the success of my company, by the incredible team I work with every day. It's defined by the laughter of my friends, my real family, as we share a meal in my home. It's defined by the quiet peace I feel when I look out over the city from my window, a city that once felt so terrifying and is now just home. It's defined by my visits with Uncle Michael, the only family I claim, sharing wine and talking about the future, not the past. They threw me out into the cold, a disposable daughter, convinced I would break. They never considered that the cold wouldn't break me but forge me. They never imagined that by casting me into the darkness, they were giving me the fire I needed to burn their gilded, hollow world to the ground. And from those ashes, I built an empire they could never touch. That's my story. It was a long, hard road, but looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. It made me who I am. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Was the revenge justified or did I go too far? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about people taking back their power, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for listening. Picture this, it's Christmas Eve. I find a receipt for a diamond necklace in my husband's coat. Christmas morning. He gives me a blender. He had no idea I knew. He thought I was just his oblivious wife, but I was waiting for the perfect moment to unwrap his devastating secret in front of everyone. If you've ever felt that pit in your stomach, that soul-crushing feeling of betrayal that just hollows you out, then you need to hear this. If you've ever had the world you built with someone turn to dust in a single moment, then you'll understand the story I'm about to tell. So maybe hit that subscribe button, because this is a story you're not going to forget. It all started in what I used to call our perfect life. It's almost funny now to think I ever really believed in perfection. But I did. I believed in it with everything I had because I believed in him. I believed in Mark. We met in a way that felt like it was straight out of a movie. One of those ridiculously cliché romantic comedies. I was a junior editor drowning in manuscripts, and he was the charming, fast-talking marketing guy from the floor above. We literally ran into each other at the coffee machine, and my latte went flying all over my white blouse. He was so mortified, so genuinely sorry, that he insisted on buying me a new shirt right then and there, and then dinner to really make up for it. That dinner lasted 4 hours. We talked about everything and nothing. He just had this way of looking at you when you spoke, like you were the only person in the world. It was intoxicating. Let me tell you, Mark was the kind of guy every woman dreams of, the one your mother wants for you. He was handsome in that classic, easy way, strong jaw, kind eyes that crinkled up when he smiled, and a smile that could stop traffic. But it was how attentive he was that really got me. He remembered the little things. He'd bring up the name of some obscure author I'd mentioned weeks before, or remember I liked tulips more than roses because they seemed happier. He was the kind of man who'd leave a sticky note on the bathroom mirror that just said, "Have a great day, beautiful." And that one little gesture could get me through the most brutal of days. Within a year, we were engaged. Within 2, married. A beautiful autumn ceremony with golden leaves everywhere, surrounded by everyone who loved us. We bought a house in the suburbs, a charming colonial with a porch swing and a huge backyard we promised we'd one day fill with the sound of kids laughing. Our life was this collage of shared dreams we'd pieced together. Sunday mornings were for newspapers and coffee, with our legs tangled up on the sofa. We hosted dinner parties where his charisma and my cooking were the perfect team. We were that couple, the one our friends called goals. Our 5-year anniversary passed, and from where I was standing, things were better than ever. Mark had just landed a huge promotion. He was a vice president now, and with it came a big raise and a year-end bonus he was practically giddy about. "This is it, babe," he said, spinning me around our kitchen. "This is the year we finally take that trip to Italy. The year we really start planning." I was so proud of him, so happy for us. It felt like all our hard work was finally paying off. We'd always been stable, but now we were rock solid. We were secure, happy, in love. At least that's what I believed. This Christmas was supposed to be the best one yet. For the first time, we were hosting Mark's entire immediate family. His doting mother, his gruff but sweet father, and his younger sister, Chloe, who'd become like a sister to me. I'd spent weeks making the house a fortress of holiday cheer. A giant Fraser fir stood in the living room, glittering with a decade's worth of ornaments, each with its own story. The whole house smelled like pine, cinnamon, and gingerbread. It was the picture of domestic bliss. It was a perfect, beautiful lie. Of course, looking back, there were signs. It's like faulty wiring in a dark room, so obvious now but so easy to miss then. The late nights at the office had started getting more frequent. "Just closing out the quarter, babe," he'd say, kissing my forehead before slipping into bed long after I'd fallen asleep. The new password on his phone, which he just laughed off. New company policy, they're making us lock everything down. And me, the trusting wife, just nodded. I didn't think twice. How could I have been so blind? He started taking calls in another room, his voice dropping to a murmur. If I walked in, he'd hang up fast. "Just a telemarketer," he'd say with that easy smile. And because I loved him, because I trusted the life we had built piece by piece, I believed him. I chose not to see the cracks forming in our foundation, because seeing them meant admitting that my perfect, movie screen love story might be a total work of fiction. Christmas Eve rolled in on a wave of Yet magic. Snow started falling in the evening, these big, fluffy flakes that covered the world in a blanket of white and muffled every sound. Inside, the house was warm, full of life. We'd had a wonderful dinner, just filled with laughter. Mark's dad told the same old jokes he tells every year, and we all laughed like it was the first time. His mom couldn't stop complimenting my cooking. Chloe and I schemed over a bottle of wine about our New Year's resolutions. Mark was the perfect host, the perfect husband. He was charming, making sure everyone's glass was full, stoking the fire, his arm always finding my waist for a quick, loving squeeze. At one point, he gave me a look from across the dinner table, that same look from our first date, and my heart did a little flip. Everything felt so right. By 11, the house was quiet. His family had all gone to bed. I was doing one last sweep of the living room, picking up empty glasses and folding blankets. Mark came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my chest, and kissed the top of my head. "Go on up to bed, hun. I'll be up in a minute. Just have to send one last work email." He disappeared into his home office and shut the door. As I finished tidying up, I saw his coat. It was a new one, a gorgeous, expensive charcoal wool coat he'd bought after his promotion. He'd worn it a few nights before to an employees-only Christmas party. He came home late that night, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine, flushed with what I thought was celebratory champagne. Now, the coat was just thrown over the back of a chair. It was such a small thing. I just wanted to hang it up properly. As I lifted the heavy wool, my fingers brushed against something stiff and crinkly in the pocket. My first thought was innocent, a receipt he'd forgotten, a shopping list. I almost left it there. A little voice in my head, the one that still believed in fairy tales, told me, "Don't snoop. It's private." But another, quieter voice whispered back, with a curiosity I couldn't ignore, "It's just a piece of paper. What could it hurt?" My fingers, almost with a mind of their own, dipped into the pocket and pulled out the folded slip. It was from Jewels & Co., the ridiculously high-end jeweler downtown. The one we'd pressed our faces against the window of years ago, just dreaming. My breath caught. I unfolded the receipt, my hand starting to shake a little. My eyes scanned the elegant font, and then I saw it. The item description. It felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. The Eternity diamond necklace. And under it, the price. It was a number with so many zeros my head spun. This wasn't just a gift. It was a declaration. A grand, sweeping, romantic gesture. The kind of thing you buy for the love of your life. The world went silent. All I could hear was the frantic, joyous drumming of my own heart. He did it. My practical, sensible Mark had done something so wildly extravagant, so impossibly romantic. The late nights, the bonus, it all made sense. This was my real gift. A wave of warmth washed over me, so intense it almost made me cry. And right behind it, a sharp pang of guilt. I'd spoiled his huge surprise. I quickly folded the receipt, my fingers fumbling now, and slipped it back into the pocket, trying to put it back exactly how I'd found it. I hung up the coat, feeling like a spy who just intercepted the world's most wonderful secret. I practically floated up the stairs and slipped into bed, my body humming with giddy energy. Mark was still in his office, the faint tap-tap-tap of his keyboard echoing down the hall. I lay there in the dark, my mind racing, picturing the necklace, imagining the weight of it on my skin. I played out the scene over and over. Him handing me a small, perfect box on Christmas morning, the look on his face, the gasps from his family, the sparkle of the diamonds. That night I fell asleep smiling, feeling like the luckiest, most loved woman in the world. I dreamed of diamonds. I had no idea I wasn't the princess in this fairy tale. I was the fool. Christmas morning was bright and cold, sunlight glinting off the snow. I woke up with this secret buzz of excitement, a giddiness I hadn't felt since I was a kid. I glanced over at Mark, sleeping peacefully, and my heart just swelled. I felt this rush of love for the man who was about to give me the surprise of a lifetime. Downstairs was happy holiday chaos. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the air. His parents were on the sofa, and Chloe was already sorting gifts into piles, a Santa hat tipped on her head. Mark came down a few minutes after me, beaming. He kissed my cheek, a quick peck, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, babe." I smiled back, searching his eyes for a tiny hint of the secret we now shared. Nothing. The gift exchange started. It was slow and happy. His dad got new golf clubs. His mom got a cashmere sweater. Chloe squealed when she unwrapped a first edity of her favorite book. I watched Mark the whole time, the anticipation building. I handed him my gift, a vintage watch he'd fallen in love with months ago. He was genuinely touched. Finally, it was my turn. Mark reached behind the tree and pulled out a large, heavy, rectangular box. My heart hammered against my ribs. This is it. It was too big for a necklace box, so I figured he'd hidden it inside to throw me off. Classic Mark. He placed the heavy box on my lap, smiling wide. "This one's for you, honey. I think you're going to love it." His family watched, their faces lit with expectation. I took a breath, savoring it. I carefully tore off the wrapping paper, my fingers tracing the cardboard box underneath. I lifted the lid. And there it was. Nestled in styrofoam was a blender. A very sleek, silver, professional-grade blender with a dozen buttons. It was a very nice, very expensive, and very practical blender. For a second, my brain just short-circuited. I stared at it, completely unable to connect the glittering diamond necklace in my head with the huge kitchen appliance on my lap. This had to be a mistake. Was the necklace hidden inside the pitcher? My fingers fumbled as I lifted it out. Nothing, just an instruction manual. I looked up at Mark, trying to plaster a happy surprise smile on my face, but I'm sure it just looked like blank confusion. I was searching his eyes for the punchline, for the twinkle that said, "Just kidding, here's the real one." It wasn't there. He was just smiling, a proud, totally oblivious smile. "It's that Pro Series one you mentioned wanting last summer for your green smoothies," he said, pleased with himself. "Remember, you said your old one just couldn't handle kale." And right then, my entire world just tilted. The warmth of Christmas morning vanished, replaced by an icy cold that started in my gut and spread through my whole body. The receipt. The Eternity diamond necklace. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a mistake. It was real, and it wasn't for me. "Oh, Mark, how thoughtful," his mother chirped from the sofa. "A good wife always needs a good blender. You're always so sensible." Sensible asterisk. The word was a slap. Every polite compliment felt like another shovel of dirt on my happiness. I forced a smile so wide my face felt like it would crack. Wow, Mark, thank you. It's exactly what I needed. My own voice sounded thin and strange. The rest of the day was a surreal, painful blur. I was a ghost at my own party. I was there, but my mind was a million miles away, trapped in a hurricane of shock and horror. I smiled. I helped in the kitchen. I sat at the dinner table across from my husband and listened to him laugh, playing the part of the man I thought I knew. Every smile was another twist of the knife. My mind was racing, replaying everything. The late nights, the perfume, the secret calls, the password. It wasn't paranoia, it was intuition, and I had smothered it with trust. How could I have been so stupid? Who was she? The question pounded in my head. Who was wearing my necklace right now, the eternity necklace? Was she prettier than me? Younger? Did he love her? The questions were torture, but I couldn't stop them. I escaped to the upstairs bathroom 3 times. The first time, I choked back sobs, my body shaking. The second time, I just tried to breathe, to push down the panic. The third time, something changed. I looked at my tear-streaked face in the mirror, and the sadness, it started to curdle. It hardened into something else, something cold and sharp. It was rage. A pure, white-hot rage that burned away the tears and left behind a terrifying clarity. He thought he'd gotten away with it. He was downstairs, basking in his family's adoration, thinking he had everything under control. He gave his wife the sensible gift and his lover the passionate one. He'd humiliated me, and he thought I was too dumb to even notice. The tears stopped. I wasn't going to be the weeping, heartbroken wife. He wanted a show, I'd give him one. His family was staying through New Year's. He was comfortable, safe in his little bubble of lies. He wouldn't expect a thing. A plan started to form in my cold, clear mind. It was theatrical. It was exactly what he deserved. I wouldn't just confront him in private, where he could lie and gaslight me until I doubted my own sanity. No, the truth deserved an audience. The same audience that watched him hand me a blender and call it love. The stage was set. Our annual New Year's Eve party. The perfect place for a finale he'd never forget. But first, I needed more than a receipt. I needed proof. For the next few days, I was a detective in my own home. I was the smiling hostess on the outside, a cold, calculating investigator on the inside. I watched him like a hawk. My chance came on the 27th. He was in the shower. I took his phone from the nightstand. My hands were steady. The password, I tried my birthday. Denied. Our anniversary. Denied his birthday, denied. My heart was pounding. I was running out of time. Then a cold, sick thought hit me. I remembered seeing a text notification a few weeks back. November 8th, 11:08. I typed it in. The phone unlocked. My breath hitched. I opened his messages, and there she was. Jessica. The thread was an endless timeline of his betrayal. My eyes scanned the words, each one a fresh cut. Counting down the seconds until I can see you again. Last night was incredible. You're the only one who really understands me. And then I found it. A message from him sent the day of his employee party. Just bought it. You're going to lose your mind when you see it. It's as beautiful as you are. Followed by a message from her from Christmas Day. A selfie. A younger woman with long blonde hair and a smug smile. And around her neck, sparkling against her skin, was the eternity diamond necklace. My necklace. Her text underneath read, "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I love you so much. Crying happy tears, best Christmas ever." The air left my body in a whoosh. Seeing it was 1,000 times worse than imagining it. But in the middle of the agony, I felt a strange validation. I wasn't crazy. This was real. Methodically, I forwarded the most damning photos and texts to my own email. I screenshotted the picture of Jessica. I went into his email, deleted the forwarded messages, then deleted them from the trash. I cleared his browser history. No trace. I put the phone back on the nightstand just as the shower turned off. I had my evidence, I had my stage, and I had my script. All I had to do was wait for the curtain to rise. New Year's Eve arrived. Our house transformed from a cozy family home into a glittering stage for my final act. Dozens of friends and colleagues filled the rooms, along with Mark's family. The air buzzed with laughter and champagne glasses clinking, all this energy for a fresh start. The irony was bitter. Mark was in his element, gliding through the crowd, an arm draped possessively around my shoulders. He was the perfect picture of the happily married man. He kept leaning in to whisper, "You look stunning tonight, babe. This is going to be our year, I can feel it." Every word was a lie that fueled the fire in my stomach. I smiled back at him, a calm, serene smile I'd practiced in the mirror. It never reached my eyes. As midnight ticked closer, the energy built. A friend started handing out party hats. Everyone gathered in the living room, their eyes on the TV where the ball in Times Square was starting to drop. This was my cue. With a calmness that felt almost out of body, I tapped a spoon against my champagne flute. The clear ring cut through the chatter. The room quieted. All eyes turned to me. I saw Mark's face, a look of fond curiosity. He probably thought I was about to give some sweet, sentimental toast. I took a breath. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice steady. "Thank you all for being here. It's a time for reflection, for looking back on the year and thinking about what's truly important." I let my eyes drift to Mark and gave him a small smile. "This year has been a big one for us. Mark's promotion. I'm so incredibly proud of the life we've built. A life built on honesty and trust and commitment. Those are the things that really matter, aren't they?" A few people murmured in agreement. Mark's smile widened. He had no idea the trap was about to spring. "And of course," I continued, my tone still light, "it's a time for gratitude, especially for thoughtful gifts. Take Christmas, for example. Mark was so incredibly thoughtful. He got me this amazing, professional-grade blender." A ripple of polite laughter. I saw his mother beaming. "But what you all don't know," I said, my voice dropping just a little, pulling them in, "is that he was even more asterisk thoughtful than that. Because he also bought a second gift, a truly special gift, an exquisite, impossibly expensive diamond necklace." The room went dead silent. The shift was instant. Confusion flickered across the faces of our friends. I looked directly at Mark. His smile was gone, frozen. Panic flashed in his eyes. I paused, letting the moment stretch until it was almost unbearable. "He just gave it to the wrong woman." Before he could even start to deny it, before anyone could say a word, I held up my phone. With one tap, I cast the screen to the large smart TV above the fireplace. And there it was, Jessica's smiling, triumphant face, and around her neck, glittering for all to see, was the eternity necklace. I swiped. The next image was their text exchange. Her words, "Best Christmas ever, I love you so much." And his reply, "It's as beautiful as you are." A collective gasp filled the room, a symphony of shock. I saw Chloe's hand fly to her mouth. Mark's father looked like he'd been punched. His mother just stared at the screen, her face ashen. Mark spun to me, his face a me. SS of shock and rage. What is this?" he stammered. "You photoshopped this. This is insane." I looked at him, not with anger or sadness, but with cold, detached pity. "It's the truth, Mark," I said calmly. "The truth you tried so hard to hide. While I was home baking cookies for your mother, you were buying diamonds for asterisk her asterisk. While I was lying in our bed on Christmas Eve, dreaming about our future, you were dreaming of a future with her. I took a step closer, my voice low but clear enough for everyone to hear. The blender was for the wife, Mark. The sensible appliance for the woman who runs your home. But the diamonds, the passion, the romance, that was for your mistress. I held his gaze. And tonight you get to have it all because I'm done. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled my wedding ring from my finger. It felt like a prop from a cheap play. I walked over to the mantelpiece and placed the ring down. The countdown on the television began. 10, 9, 8. I turned my back on him, on his family, on the life that had been a lie. And as the clock struck midnight and the crowd on TV roared, I walked out the front door into the cold, clean air of the new year. Alone. And for the first time in a very long time, free. Stepping out of that house into the freezing night air. It was the most terrifying and the most liberating moment of my life, all at once. The distant pop of fireworks sounded like a far-off battle, a fitting soundtrack for the war I'd just ended. I had just blown up my entire life, and I had no idea what was next. I just knew I couldn't stay there one more second. The aftermath was messy. My phone blew up with calls and texts from Mark, a desperate cycle of apologies, denials, and pathetic pleas. He called me crazy. He called me cruel. Then he called me the love of his life and begged me to come back. I didn't read them. I blocked his number. His family fractured. Chloe called me the next day, crying. She was on my side, disgusted by her brother. His father was silent. His mother, on the other hand, she had a different take. She called a week later to suggest that I had overreacted, that good men sometimes make foolish mistakes, and that my public shaming of him was worse than his affair. That call sealed it for me. I wasn't just leaving a man. I was leaving an entire system that enabled his lies. I didn't fight. I hired a lawyer and let them do the talking. The path forward was brutally clear. No reconciliation, no therapy, no second chances. You can't just glue trust back together once it's been shattered like that. All you can do is sweep up the pieces. It's been a year now. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. The house, our asterisk house, was sold. I have my own apartment now, a bright space filled with things that are only mine. I'm still a book editor, but I freelance now on my own terms. There are good days and bad days. Days I feel powerful, and days I'm ambushed by grief for the life I thought I had. Healing isn't a straight line. But here's the truth. I am happier. I am more myself than I have been in years. The betrayal was a fire that burned my world to the ground, but I'm learning that sometimes scorched earth is where new things grow best. I learned that my worth isn't determined by the size of a diamond a man buys for me. It's not measured by my marital status or by how perfect my life looks. My worth is mine. It's forged in my resilience and my courage to choose myself, even when it was the hardest choice in the world. And the blender. It was one of the few things I took without a fight. It sits on my new kitchen counter. It's a damn good blender. And every morning when I use it to make my smoothie and those blades roar to life, it's a reminder. A reminder that the best gifts, the most nourishing and valuable ones, are the ones you give yourself. Dignity, self-respect, and a clean break. Betrayal is a unique kind of pain. It makes you question the person you loved, but it also makes you question your own judgment, your own reality. But surviving it teaches you that you are stronger than you ever knew. It forces you to find a foundation inside yourself that no one can ever shake. So now I have to ask you, what would you have done? Have you ever had a moment where a simple object, a gift, revealed a devastating truth? Share your story in the comments below. Reading your experiences helps all of us feel less alone. Your stories matter. And finally, if this story resonated with you at all, please give this video a like and maybe think about subscribing. It tells the platform that these stories are important and helps more people find our community. Thank you so much for listening. My mother-in-law demanded we wake up at 4 a.m. on Christmas morning and drive 3 hours just for her. So, we canceled her Christmas by locking our doors, turning off our phones, and enjoying the peace and quiet. Here's what happened. To really get the absolute audacity of this request, you have to understand my mother-in-law, Carol. Carol is a character. She's one of those people who truly believes the world quietly rearranges itself to suit her needs. She doesn't see it as entitlement. To her, it's just the natural order of things. For years, my husband, Mark, and I have navigated her special brand of chaos, especially around the holidays. For Carol, the holidays aren't about peace and goodwill. They're a competitive sport, and she is the reigning, undefeated champion of making everyone else miserable. Every family has its quirks, right? But with Carol, it was less quirky and more like a low-grade psychological war. Take the Christmas of 2019, which I now call the Great Gift Inquisition. I had spent weeks, literally weeks, picking out what I thought were thoughtful, personal gifts. When Carol opened hers, a beautiful first edition copy of her favorite book, she held it up, squinted, and said, "Oh, a book. I suppose I'll find time to read it eventually." She then went around the room and offered unsolicited, backhanded critiques of every single gift I'd given. Another sweater for Uncle Joe. How practical. By the end, I felt like I'd failed a final exam I didn't even know I was taking. Then there was Easter of 2021, the case of the migrating ham. We were hosting. I'd cleaned the house for 2 days straight, the kind of deep clean you only do for royalty or a mother-in-law. An hour before guests were supposed to arrive, Carol called. "Change of plans," she announced, not asked. "Everyone's coming to my house. I just decided it would be easier." When I gently protested, explaining I had a 20-pound ham in the oven and enough potato salad to feed an army, she just laughed. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. Just pack it all up and bring it over. It's only a 40-minute drive." We spent the next hour frantically shoving hot food into our car like we were evacuating a disaster zone, all because Carol had a whim. My husband, Mark, God bless him, has the patience of a saint who's been offered early retirement. He grew up in this environment, so for a long time her behavior was just normal. It was the water he swam in. He saw her as eccentric, maybe a little difficult, but he didn't see the pattern of control and disrespect that I did. It took years and a few sessions of couples counseling for him to see that his mother's quirks were actually full-blown boundary violations. It's not that he didn't love her. He just started to see that protecting our own little family, me and our 2 kids, 7-year-old Lily and 5-year-old Tom, had to be the top priority. We started the slow, painful process of setting boundaries, which, with Carol, is about as effective as building a sandcastle against a tsunami. You'd say, "Carol, we can't make it on Sunday, but we'd love to see you next week." And she'd hear, "We are disrespecting you and rejecting your love, so you should call our relatives and tell them what ungrateful children you have." It was exhausting. We learned that a simple no was never the end of a conversation. It was the opening bell for a 3-round guilt trip. She was a master manipulator, able to twist any situation to make herself the victim. If you didn't do what she wanted, you weren't just inconveniencing her. You were actively, purposefully breaking her heart. So leading up to this Christmas, we were already on high alert. The year had been a series of small battles. We said no to last-minute babysitting. We insisted on leaving her house at a reasonable hour instead of staying until midnight while our kids conked out on the floor. Each boundary was a tiny win, but it left us drained. We were tired of the constant vigilance, the strategy required for a peaceful weekend. We knew Christmas would be the main event. We just didn't know how bad it would be. The call came about 2 weeks before Christmas on a Tuesday evening. I was trying to untangle a string of Christmas lights that seemed to have tied itself into a sailor's knot out of pure spite. The kids were decorating gingerbread men, which mostly meant eating gumdrops and smearing frosting on their faces. It was a perfectly normal, chaotic, happy December night. Then the phone rang. It was Carol. Mark put her on speakerphone, a self-preservation tactic we'd developed. We needed witnesses. A united front was everything. "Hello," Mark said, his voice already a little cautious. "Mark, darling." Carol's voice was sickeningly cheerful, the tone she used right before asking for something completely unreasonable. It was her buttering you up voice. "I've had the most wonderful idea for Christmas." I stopped my fight with the lights and cow. GHT Mark's eye. He gave me a look that said, "Here we go." "Okay, what is it, Mom?" he asked. "Well," she began, drawing out the word, "you know the big family get-together is at your Aunt Susan's this year, right? And she's so excited." Aunt Susan lived in a town we'll call North Pole, about 3 hours away from us. Carol lived about halfway between us and Susan, in a town we'll call Elfington. This little geographical detail is very, very important. "Right," Mark said slowly. "We were planning on driving up Christmas morning." "Exactly," Carol chirped. "And I was thinking it would be so much more efficient if you just came to my place first. Get here bright and early, we'll have a quick coffee, and then we can all drive to Susan's together in your car. It'll be a little adventure." I could already see where this was going. I started shaking my head silently at Mark. He held up a hand, telling me to wait. "Mom, what do you mean by bright and early?" he asked. The trap was half sprung. And then she dropped the bomb, the line that would go down in our family's history. "Oh, not too early. If you leave your house around 4 a.m., you should get here by 5:30. That gives us a half hour to load my things into your car, and we can be on the road to Susan's by 6. We'll be the first ones there. Won't that be lovely?" Silence, just dead silence on our end. I stared at Mark, my jaw on the floor. Lily looked up from her frosting-covered cookie and asked, "What's 4 a.m.?" And I just shushed her gently. 4 a.m. on Christmas morning. She wanted us to wake up our 2 young children in the middle of the night, drag them into a cold car, and drive an hour and a half in the dark to her house, just to pick her up and drive another hour and a half to a party. All because she didn't feel like driving herself. Mark finally found his voice. "Mom, you want us to wake the kids up at 4 in the morning on Christmas Day." "Don't be so dramatic, Mark. They can sleep in the car. It's not a big deal. It will be fun, like a Christmas road trip," she said, as if this were a magical journey to Disney World and not a forced march in the dead of winter. "Why can't you just drive yourself and meet us there?" I whispered, even though she couldn't hear me. It was the obvious, logical question. Mark, to his credit, asked it out loud. "Mom, why can't you just drive to Susan's? We can meet you there." Carol let out a long, theatrical sigh. "Oh, you know I hate driving on the highway, especially in the winter. Besides, this is about family, spending time together. I just thought it would be nice. I don't understand why you have to be so difficult." And there it was, the classic pivot. We weren't being practical, we were being difficult. We weren't protecting our kids' sleep and our own sanity. We were ruining her vision of family time. This was no longer a request. It was a test of our devotion. "Mom, that's not going to work for us," Mark said, his voice firm. I felt a surge of pride. The old Mark might have wavered, might have said, "Let me think about it." code for let me argue with my wife until one of us gives in. But this was the new boundary-setting Mark. What do you mean it's not going to work for you? Carol's cheerful tone vanished, replaced by a sharp, icy edge. It's the most logical plan. I'm on the way. It's not logical to wake up two small children at 4 a.m. on Christmas morning, Mark stated flatly. We will be at Susan's around noon. We can see you then. Noon, she shrieked, and I'm not exaggerating, it was a shriek. Both kids jumped. The party starts at 9. You'll miss everything. You're doing this just to upset me, aren't you? No, Mom. We're doing this for our family, for our kids. We want a slow, peaceful Christmas morning at home watching them open presents. That is our plan, Mark said. And that was the key. Our plan asterisk. Well, that's incredibly selfish of you, she sniffed. Just incredibly selfish. But fine. Do whatever you want. Just know that you're ruining Christmas. I'll expect you at my house at 5:30 a.m. to pick me up. And then she hung up. She didn't just hang up, she completely steamrolled his no. She heard his boundary, decided it was garbage, and then repeated her plan as if the last 5 minutes never happened. This was a classic Carol move, a power play designed to make us doubt ourselves. She was basically saying, your no is irrelevant. I don't acknowledge it. The plan stands, and if you don't show up, you're the ones who failed. Mark and I just stared at each other. The half-decorated gingerbread men and tangled lights suddenly seemed ridiculous. The festive cheer had been sucked out of the room, replaced by a thick, heavy tension. So, I said, finally breaking the silence, that went well. Mark ran a hand through his hair, a telltale sign of major stress. She's not going to let this go. I know, I said. She thinks she just won. She thinks we're going to cave. And in that moment, looking at my husband's exhausted face and my kids who were now quietly asking what was wrong, something else started to bubble up inside me. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was resolve. I was done. We were done. We had tried playing by the rules, using polite I statements and having respectful disagreements. It never worked, because you can't respectfully disagree with someone who doesn't respect you. This wasn't just about a 4 a.m. wake-up call. This was about years of being dismissed, manipulated, and controlled. This was about finally, truly, taking our Christmas back. Before I tell you what we did next, if you've ever had a holiday horror story like this, if you've ever dealt with a family member who thinks your boundaries are just gentle suggestions, hit that subscribe button. You are definitely in the right place. And please tell me in the comments, what is the most ridiculous demand a family member has ever made of you? I need to know I'm not alone. For the next few days, we lived in a state of low-grade dread. Carol, true to form, acted as if our phone call had been a roaring success. She sent a text to the family group chat. So excited for our little Christmas adventure. Can't wait for Mark and the family to pick me up on Christmas morning. She even tagged us in a Facebook post with a picture of a car loaded with presents, captioned, "Road trip, families, everything." It was a masterclass in passive aggression. She was building a public narrative where we had agreed to her plan, making it that much harder for us to back out without looking like villains. Mark and I had a long talk that night. We sat at the kitchen table, the festive mood from earlier completely shattered. She's not just going to be waiting, I said, stirring my tea. She's going to be packed, coat on, ready to go. She'll have told everyone we're coming. She's setting a trap. I know, Mark sighed. And when we don't show up, she'll call everyone. Aunt Susan, my brother, everybody. We'll be the villains who abandoned her on Christmas morning. We sat in silence for a minute, the weight of it all pressing down. For years, we had played defense, always reacting to her moves, trying to mitigate the damage, and usually compromising our own happiness just to keep the peace. But keeping the peace was starting to feel a lot like surrender. "What if," I said slowly, an idea taking shape, "we just don't play?" Mark looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we stop engaging?" We told her no. She refused to accept it. "That's on her. What if we just turn off our phones?" His eyes widened a bit. "Turn them off on Christmas morning?" "Completely off," I confirmed. "We lock the doors, we make hot chocolate, we put on Christmas music, we have the peaceful morning with our kids that we told her we wanted. No calls, no texts, we don't get sucked into the drama, we just opt out, we cancel her plans." It felt radical, terrifying, and absolutely wonderful. The goal was to create a bubble of peace, an impenetrable fortress of holiday cheer. No amount of guilt-tripping texts or frantic voicemails could get in if the phones were simply off. It wasn't about being cool. It was about taking back control of our own home. It was about enforcing the boundary we already set, but this time, leaving zero room for negotiation. It was a preemptive strike for peace. Mark was hesitant at first. "People will freak out. They'll think something happened to us." "So we get ahead of it," I countered, on a roll now. "We send one simple text on Christmas Eve before we go dark. You send it to your brother and Aunt Susan. Something like, 'Hey, just confirming our plans for tomorrow. We're having a quiet morning at home with the kids and we'll head your way around 11 a.m. to get there by noon. See you then. Merry Christmas.'" It was perfect. It established our timeline in writing. It was cheerful, non-confrontational, and didn't mention Carol at all. It just stated our plan. If Carol later claimed we abandoned her, they would have a text from us from the night before, making it clear we were never coming at dawn. We had documentary evidence of our sanity. A smile started to spread across Mark's face. "That's actually brilliant. It neutralizes her story before she even starts telling it." "Exactly," I said. "We're not ignoring her. We're just following through on the plan we communicated. Her choice to wait for a ride she was told wasn't coming is her choice. Not our fault." And so, Operation Silent Night was born. The name was my idea and I was unreasonably proud of it. The next week was spent in a strange state of giddy defiance. We bought extra marshmallows. I picked out the coziest Christmas pajamas. Mark made an upbeat holiday playlist. We were no longer dreading Christmas morning. We were planning a celebration of our own independence. Christmas Eve arrived. The kids were buzzing, leaving out Cookie. As for Santa, we read them "'Twas the night before Christmas," tucked them in, and then it was time. At 10 p.m., Mark pulled out his phone. He typed the message exactly as we planned and sent it to his brother and Aunt Susan. We saw "delivered." No turning back. Then came the final symbolic act. We both took our phones. We looked at each other, a silent "Are we really doing this?" passing between us. I nodded, he nodded back. And together we held down the power buttons and watched our screens go black. The silence in the house was profound. It wasn't just quiet. It was the absence of obligation, the absence of drama. It was the sound of freedom. We went to bed feeling a mix of terror and pure, unadulterated joy. For the first time in years, we were going to have Christmas on our own terms. I woke up on Christmas morning not to the shriek of a 3:30 a.m. alarm, but to soft morning light filtering through the curtains. It was 8 o'clock. The house was quiet. There was no panic, no rushing, no impending doom. There was just peace. Mark was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed and smiling. "We did it," he whispered. "It's Christmas and we're still in our pajamas." We went downstairs to a scene that was everything we'd hoped for. The tree twinkled, presents were piled underneath, and the only sound was the gentle hum of the fridge. We put on Mark's upbeat, jazzy Christmas playlist. I started making coffee, the rich smell filling the kitchen. A few minutes later, Lily and Tom came thundering down the stairs, their eyes wide. "He came! Santa came!" Lily shouted. What followed was 2 hours of pure joy. We sat on the floor in our pajamas, sipping coffee and hot chocolate, watching our kids experience the magic. Tom ripped paper off gifts with ferocious intensity while Lily carefully saved every bow. There were squeals over a new dollhouse and a Lego set. There were no deadlines, no one telling us to hurry up, no one sighing dramatically in the corner. It was just us, our little family in our little bubble. Around 9:30 a.m., I thought about our phones sitting lifeless upstairs. I imagined the barrage they must be enduring. The text from Carol starting around 4:05 a.m. with a chipper, leaving soon, then escalating. "Where are you? It's 5:30. The frantic calls, the texts from other relatives she'd roped in. "Carol is worried sick. Is everything okay?" And then the anger. "I can't believe you would do this to your own mother. On Christmas." The old me would have been sick with anxiety, picturing the family group chat imploding. But as I sat on the floor, surrounded by wrapping paper, my son showing me his new toy dinosaur for the 10th time, I felt nothing. Just a profound sense of calm. The drama was happening out there somewhere, but it couldn't touch us here. We had built a wall, not of anger, but of joy. We made a big breakfast of pancakes and bacon. We let the kids play, leaving the wrapping paper mess on the floor. We didn't care. It was our mess in our house on our time. It was the most relaxing, genuinely happy Christmas morning of my adult life. It wasn't about canceling Carol. It was about protecting our own peace. At exactly 11:00 a.m. as planned, we started getting ready. We showered and dressed at a leisurely pace. We packed up our gifts and a dish to share. And at 11:45 a.m., we finally turned our phones back on. It was a nuclear explosion in digital form. Mark's phone had 32 missed calls and 57 texts. Mine had about half that. The first few from Carol started sweet and turned sour. 5:32 a.m. I'm already just waiting on you guys, so excited. 6:15 a.m. Getting a little late. Is everything okay? Call me. 6:45 a.m. Mark, this isn't funny. I'm worried. Why aren't you answering? 7:30 a.m. I have called you 15 times. Your aunt is wondering where we are. You are embarrassing me. 8:15 a.m. Fine. I see how it is. You have deliberately and maliciously decided to abandon me on Christmas Day after you promised to pick me up. I have never been so hurt in my life. You have ruined Christmas. Then came the texts from everyone else. His brother, his aunt, his cousins. The early ones were concerned. "Hey, your mom's freaking out. Everything okay?" The later ones were annoyed. "Dude, what is going on? Just call your mom." Mark took a deep breath, his face grim but resolute. He scrolled to the text chain with his brother and typed a simple reply. "Sorry for the missed calls. We had our phones off for a quiet Christmas morning with the kids like I mentioned last night. We're on our way to Susan's now. See you soon." He sent it. It was calm, breezy, and completely invalidated Carol's narrative of being maliciously abandoned. We had a plan. We communicated it, and we followed it. Her meltdown was a problem of her own making. As we drove, we listened to Christmas carols with the kids and pointed out the snowy trees. But I knew we were both thinking the same thing. We were heading into Lion's Den, but for the first time we weren't going in as prey. When we walked into Aunt Susan's house at 12:15 p.m., the festive chatter died. It was a record scratch moment. 20 pairs of eyes turned to us. In the center of the living room, sitting on an armchair like a queen holding court, was Carol. Her eyes were red-rimmed, a handkerchief clutched in her hand. She saw us and let out a dramatic, shuddering sob. "They're here," she whispered to the room. They've finally decided to show up. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, but something in us had shifted. We were no longer a captive audience. Mark smiled brightly, completely ignoring her theatrics. "Merry Christmas, everyone," he said cheerfully as we took off our coats. "Wow, Susan, the house looks beautiful." A few people mumbled Merry Christmas back, looking awkwardly between us and Carol. Mark's brother Dave walked over. "Mom said you guys stood her up," he said in a low voice. Mark just shrugged, still smiling. "We told her 4 a.m. wasn't going to work. I texted you our actual plans last night. We just wanted a quiet morning with the kids. You know how it is." He clapped his brother on the shoulder. "Anyway, what did I miss?" And just like that, all the wind went out of Carol's sails. By refusing to get into the drama, by acting like nothing was wrong, we made her powerless. Her tantrum had no effect if we didn't acknowledge it. For the rest of the day, Carol gave us the silent treatment. She pointedly looked away when we walked into a room. She talked to the kids but ignored us. And honestly, it was blissful. It was the most peaceful family gathering we'd ever had. Without her constant commentary and digs, the atmosphere was light. Other family members, after their initial awkwardness, seemed to relax too. Turns out, nobody enjoyed walking on eggshells around her. We left around 5 p.m. after a pleasant, drama-free afternoon. We didn't apologize or explain ourselves again. We had set a boundary, communicated it, and stuck to it. There was nothing to be sorry for. The car ride home was quiet, but it was a comfortable quiet. The kids were dozing in the back. As we pulled into our driveway, I looked over at Mark. "We survived," I said. He reached over and took my hand. "We did more than survive," he said. "I think we just created a new tradition." And he was right. That Christmas was a turning point. It was the day we stopped letting someone else's entitlement ruin our family's happiness. It was hard and scary, but the feeling of waking up on our own terms was worth every bit of the temporary fallout. We learned that keeping the peace isn't worth sacrificing your own. Sometimes you have to weather the storm to get to the calm on the other side. And our Christmas, the one we fought for, was the calmest, most joyful one we have ever had. It turns out, sometimes the best way to deal with cancel culture is to just cancel the drama, lock the doors, and enjoy a cup of hot chocolate. We were all gathered for what I assumed was just another painfully awkward Christmas dinner. The tension between my aunt and me was so thick you could carve it with a turkey knife, but nobody was prepared for what was coming. My grandpa stood up, cleared his throat, and instead of some holiday toast, he looked right at me and said something that would send a shockwave through our family. The silence that followed was deafening, a total vacuum where the festive cheer used to be. And in that silence, I saw my aunt's face. It was a perfect, horrifying masterpiece of disbelief, rage, and raw, unfiltered greed. To understand, you have to know this wasn't just about a house. It was about a home. The home my grandpa, Walter, built with my grandma, Eleanor. It was a charming colonial with a creaky porch and a big backyard filled with maple trees that turned to fire in the fall. It was the house where I spent every summer, every holiday, every moment I could steal away from my own quiet, cold home. My parents were, well, they were providers. They gave me a roof and food, but warmth was a currency they just didn't trade in. Their lives were a blur of business trips and social events, and their phone notifications always seemed more important than a scraped knee or a school play. So Grandpa's house became my sanctuary. He and Grandma Alina were my real parents in every way that mattered. Grandma taught me how to bake. her hands always dusted with flour as she'd let me knead dough for her famous cinnamon rolls. Grandpa taught me how to fix things. We'd spend hours in his garage, the air thick with the smell of sawdust and oil, while he patiently showed me how to change the oil in his old pickup or build a birdhouse. He'd always say, "A person who can't fix things is a person who has to rely on others for everything. Be self-reliant, kiddo." That house held every important memory of my childhood. The pencil marks on the kitchen doorframe tracking my height, the faint scratch on the hardwood floor where I crashed my toy truck, the smell of lemon polish and cinnamon that just meant I was home. After Grandma and Lena passed away, the house got quieter, but my bond with Grandpa only got deeper. I was in high school then, and I made it my mission to be there for him. I'd drive over after school and we'd sit on the porch swing, sometimes talking for hours, sometimes just watching the sunset in comfortable silence. I learned to cook his favorite meals, the ones Grandma used to make. I helped him with the garden, pulling weeds and planting tomatoes just like she did. I wasn't doing it for any reason other than I loved him. He was my rock. He was home. My Aunt Carol, though, saw the house very differently. She was my dad's sister, and to her, that house wasn't a home. It was an asset, an investment, a future inheritance she talked about like it was already hers. Carol was the kind of person who measured love in dollars and cents. She lived about 3 hours away, and her visits were rare, usually saved for holidays where she could hold court and remind everyone of her important city job and her 2 perfect kids. Her phone calls to Grandpa were just as rare and always felt like they had an agenda. They were quick, transactional. "Just making sure you're still kicking, Dad," she'd say with a laugh that never, ever reached her eyes. She'd ask about the house's upkeep, not his health. "Did you get that roof checked? A leak could kill the property value." Not once did she ask if he was lonely. Not once did she offer to come down for a weekend just to keep him company. For her, distance was the perfect excuse for neglect. My cousins were cut from the same cloth. When they were younger, they treated Grandpa's house like a boring museum, complaining about the bad Wi-Fi and the old people smell. As they got older, their visits just stopped. They were replaced by a single Christmas card signed by my aunt. The contrast was impossible to miss, and Grandpa saw it all. He was a quiet man, an observer. He never said much about it, but I could see the flicker of disappointment in his eyes after a short, hollow call from Carol. I could feel the warmth in his hug when I'd show up unannounced with groceries and his favorite crossword puzzles. He started calling me his right-hand man, his Eliner Jr. It was our little joke, but there was a deep truth to it. We were a team, keeping the heart of that house beating. The house itself was modest, but it was loved. It was probably worth a decent amount since the neighborhood had gotten more desirable over the years, but I never thought about its price tag. How could you put a price on the place where you learned to ride a bike, where you had your heart broken for the first time and were comforted with a bowl of ice cream, where the ghost of your grandmother's laughter still echoed in the hallways? You couldn't. To me, it was priceless. To my aunt, its price was the only thing it mattered. The years leading up to that Christmas were full of red flags. Looking back, they were all pieces of a puzzle Grandpa was carefully putting together. It started subtly. A few years back, Aunt Carol called Grandpa in a total panic. Her husband had lost his job and they were about to fall behind on their mortgage. I remember Grandpa on the phone for a long time, his voice low and steady. He hung up looking exhausted. He ended up giving her a huge chunk of money, what he called an advance on her inheritance, to keep them afloat. I thought it was just a kind thing to do. Turns out it was a test. 6 months later, her husband had a new, even better job. They bought a new car and took a lavish trip to Hawaii. Did Grandpa get a thank you call? Nope. Did they offer to pay him back? Of course not. Instead, the next time Carol visited, she spent the whole time talking about upgrading their own house. "This place is nice, Dad," she said, waving her hand around Grandpa's living room, "but it's a bit dated. When this becomes ours, we'll have to do a full gut renovation. Open concept, you know." What? She said it so casually, like she was talking about the weather. I was sitting right there, on the sofa my grandma picked out, and I just felt this hot flash of anger. My grandpa just nodded slowly, his face impossible to read. "Is that so?" he said, his voice quiet. That was the first time I felt a real shift. It wasn't just neglect anymore. It was entitlement. A deep, ugly entitlement that saw my grandpa not as a person but as a placeholder. They were vultures, just circling and waiting. Then Grandpa started doing strange things. He asked me to help him organize his paperwork. We spent a weekend in his study, sorting through old files and financial statements. He'd pull out a document and explain everything. "This is the policy for the house insurance," he'd say, "and this is the contact for Bill the plumber. He's a good man." At the time, I thought he was just being practical, preparing me for a day way down the road when I might have to help manage his affairs. I now realize he was training me. He was giving me the tools to manage the house myself. During that weekend, he casually said, "You know, I keep a little log of things, phone calls, visits, just to keep my memory straight." He tapped a small, leather-bound notebook on his desk. "It's interesting what you notice when you write things down." A chill went down my spine. He was keeping a record of the neglect. The Christmas right before the big announcement was awful. My aunt and her family showed up late on Christmas Eve with a store-bought pie and a mountain of presents for themselves. There was a small, generic gift bag for Grandpa with a tie he'd never wear, and one for me with a candle that smelled like a chemical fire. Dinner felt like a performance. My aunt dominated every conversation, bragging about her promotion. My uncle went on about his golf handicap. My cousins were glued to their phones, grunting one-word answers when Grandpa asked them a question. They left early the next morning, claiming they had to get to another party. They didn't help with dishes. They didn't spend any real time with Grandpa. They were just checking a box. After they left, Grandpa was standing by the window, watching their car drive away. He was quiet for a long time. Then he turned to me and said, "Family shouldn't feel like an obligation, should it?" It wasn't really a question, but it was filled with so much pain that my heart just broke for him. That year he'd had a small health scare, pneumonia that put him in the hospital for a few days. I was there every single day. I called my dad, who was on a business trip, and told me to keep him updated. I called my Aunt Carol. Her response, "Oh dear, is it serious? I can't possibly get away from work right now, but send him my love. Let me know what the doctors say about his long-term prognosis." Prognosis. Not how is he, but how long has he got? Grandpa recovered, but something in him hardened after that. He saw, with perfect clarity, who was there when the chips were down. In the months leading up to that final Christmas, Grandpa started making more pointed comments. He'd ask me questions in front of my parents when they bothered to visit. "Sarah, what was the name of that fellow who fixed the furnace last winter?" I'd answer, and he'd nod. "That's right. Your cousin Mark wouldn't know that. He probably thinks heat just magically appears." My dad would just shift uncomfortably. He also asked me for a copy of my birth certificate and driver's license. "Just for my records," he said, waving it off. I now know he was preparing the deed transfer. He was arming himself for the final confrontation. Looking back, the signs were all there. The record keeping, the financial tests, the pointed questions. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a carefully planned, long-term strategy. He was going to reward loyalty and punish greed. And he chose Christmas dinner, the one time the whole family was forced to be together, as his stage. Christmas Day arrived, wrapped in a thick blanket of forced cheer. The dinner was tense. There were about 20 of us packed around the dining table. My uncle was bragging about his son Mark's new internship. "He's going to be a real shark," he beamed. My aunt was one-upping him, talking about her daughter Ashley's acceptance into a prestigious university. I just tried to focus on Grandpa. He was at the head of the table, looking calm, but I could see a glint in his eye. He was a general surveying his battlefield. Finally, dessert was served. This was usually when Grandpa gave a rambling toast about family. Aunt Carol was already looking bored, subtly checking her watch. But this time was different. Grandpa stood up, holding his water glass. The room quieted. "I want to thank you all for coming," he began, his voice surprisingly strong. "It's nice to have the house full." He paused, his eyes sweeping across the table. "A house is a funny thing," he continued. "It's just wood and nails. But a home is built out of love. It's built out of memories. It's built by the people who show up." His eyes landed on Aunt Carol. "Some people think a home is an investment, a line item on a balance sheet, something you're entitled to just because you share a bloodline." The air in the room went ice cold. Carol's smile was frozen on her face, but her eyes had narrowed. "For years," Grandpa went on, "I've watched, I've listened, I've kept track." He patted his jacket pocket where I knew that little leather notebook was. "I've seen who calls just to check in and who calls to check on their future financial security. I've seen who shows up to help with a leaky faucet or a lonely Tuesday afternoon. And I've seen who shows up only when there's an expectation of a handout." My father was staring at his plate. My mother looked like she wanted to disappear. Aunt Carol's face was slowly turning a blotchy red. "Legacy isn't about passing down things to people who feel they've earned them by simply existing," Grandpa said, his voice ringing with conviction. "It's about rewarding the love and loyalty you've been given." He then turned his gaze fully on me. My heart started pounding. "Sarah," he said, his voice softening, "you have been more than a granddaughter to me. You have been a daughter, a friend, and my constant companion. You have filled this house with warmth when it was empty. You have given me your time, your effort, and your love without ever asking for anything in return." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a long, white envelope. It looked official, legal. My breath caught in my throat. "This year I'm not giving out trinkets and stocking stuffers," he announced to the stunned room. "I'm giving out what is deserved." He walked around the table, stood beside my chair, and placed the envelope right in front of me. "Sarah, I am giving you this house," he said, his voice booming in the silence. "The deed is in this envelope. It has been legally transferred and filed. It is yours, effective immediately." The silence that followed was absolute, a heavy blanket that smothered every sound. For a solid 10 seconds, nobody breathed. And then I looked at my aunt. Her face was a storm of pure, ugly emotion. The fake smile vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed gape of disbelief. Her skin went pale, except for angry red blotches spreading down her neck. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, darted from the envelope to my face, then to Grandpa's. Then the disbelief curdled into rage. Her mouth twisted into a snarl. It was the face of someone who had just watched their winning lottery ticket burn to ashes. "You can't be serious," Carol hissed, her voice trembling. She pushed her chair back and stood up. "You're giving it to her, a child." "She is more of an adult than you will ever be," Grandpa said calmly. "This is my birthright, this is our family home," she shrieked, her voice getting louder with every word. "I am your daughter. What about my children, your other grandchildren?" "What about them?" Grandpa shot back. "When was the last time Mark or Ashley called me? When was the last time they set foot in this house when it wasn't a mandatory holiday? This house is for the person who values it, not the people who see it as a cash prize. Uncle Mike was on his feet now. Now, Walter, let's not be hasty. It's Christmas. I have never been less emotional and more clear-headed in my life. Grandpa cut him off. He turned to the rest of the shocked table. As for the rest of my estate, he said, his voice like ice, it has been placed in a trust. The sole beneficiary is Sarah. There will be nothing else for anyone. The will is ironclad. I made sure of it. That was the final blow, not just the house, everything. Aunt Carol let out a sound that was half scream, ha. LF sob. You will regret this, old man, she screeched, pointing a shaking finger at him. You've torn this family apart. No, Carol, Grandpa said, his voice suddenly full of a deep sadness. You and your greed tore this family apart years ago. I'm just finally cleaning up the mess. And with that, he sat back down, picked up his fork, and took a calm bite of his apple pie. Section 4. The fallout, the shattering of a family. The explosion after Grandpa's announcement was immediate. My Aunt Carol's shriek of, "You've torn this family apart," was just the beginning. How could you do this? She screamed, turning her venom on me. You schemed for this, didn't you? All those little visits. You were playing the long game, manipulating a lonely old man. I was just frozen, my hand hovering over the envelope. The accusation was so vile it stunned me into silence. My father, who had been a statue until now, finally spoke. Carol, that's enough, he said, his voice weak. Enough, she rounded on him. Don't you see what happened, David? He's given everything to your asterisk daughter, everything that should have been split between us. Are you just going to let her take it? My dad looked at me, then at Grandpa. I saw a sort of weary defeat in his eyes. He had to have known this was coming on some level. He'd seen how Grandpa favored me, heard the digs for years, and chosen to ignore it. It's his house, Carol, his money. His decision, my dad mumbled. That wasn't the answer she wanted. Uncle Mike tried a different tactic. Walter, with all due respect, this is a major financial decision. Have you had a competency evaluation recently? Maybe a lawyer should look this over. Grandpa let out a short, sharp laugh. Oh, I've had lawyers, Mike. A whole team of them. They assured me any attempt to contest this on the grounds of competency will be met with a mountain of evidence to the contrary, including signed affidavits from my doctors and a logbook detailing every family interaction for the past 5 years. He patted his jacket pocket again. I told you, I was prepared. My cousins, Mark and Ashley, finally looked up from their phones. So, we get nothing? Ashley asked, her voice dripping with the disbelief of someone who has never been told no. All of Grandpa's money goes to asterisk her. That is correct, Grandpa said, looking her right in the eye. That's not fair, Mark chimed in, slamming his fist on the table. We're his grandchildren too. Being a grandchild is a biological fact, Grandpa said calmly. Being family is an action. You have not acted like family. That was it. The dam broke. Carol grabbed her purse. Fine, you can have him. You can have this stupid old house. But don't you dare come crying to us when he's old and sick and needs to be taken care of. You've made your bed, Sarah. Now you get to lie in it. She stormed out, her family scrambling behind her. The other relatives at the table quickly made their excuses and scurried away. Within 10 minutes, the house was nearly empty. It was just me, Grandpa, and my parents, sitting amidst the ruins of Christmas dinner. My mother was silently crying. I finally touched the envelope, my fingers trembling. I looked at Grandpa. He just gave me a small, tired smile and a nod. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be, he said softly. This was a long time coming. It's better to live in truth than in a comfortable lie. The drive home with my parents was dead silent. When we finally got to our house, my dad turned to me. "You have to understand, Sarah," he started. "Carol feels betrayed." "She feels betrayed?" I asked, my voice finally finding its strength. "I was there 3 times a week. I was there when he was sick. I was there when he was lonely. She wasn't betrayed, she was exposed." "It's not about the visits," my mom said, her voice thin. "You don't cut off family." "She was the one who said not to come crying to her when he gets sick," I shot back. "She cut him off the moment the money was gone. Was he only family when he had something to give her?" They had no answer for that. The next few days were a blur of angry texts and voicemails. Carol accused me of elder abuse and theft. She threatened to sue. But through it all, Grandpa was a sea of calm. I called him every day. He told me he'd had the locks changed. "The air in the house is cleaner," he said. A week later, I drove over to my house. As I stepped inside, the familiar scent of lemon and cinnamon wrapped around me. Grandpa was in the living room, reading a book. He looked up and smiled. "Welcome home, Sarah," he said. The storm was far from over, but in that moment I knew we'd weathered the worst of it. The family I had known was gone, but we were building something new. Something smaller, quieter, but infinitely more real. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have accepted the house, knowing it would blow up your family? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you've ever felt like the overlooked one in your family, or you just enjoy stories about justice being served, please like this, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. In the end, Aunt Carol's threats were just hot air. Her lawyers likely told her what Grandpa's lawyers already knew. The case was unwinnable. His paperwork was perfect, and his little logbook was the nail in the coffin. After a few months of silence, we heard through the grapevine that she and my uncle had sold their house and downsized. Turns out, living without the safety net of a massive inheritance requires some lifestyle changes. My relationship with my parents was strained for a long time. It took them almost a year to really come around and see that Grandpa's decision wasn't an attack, but a defense of what he believed in. Eventually, they started visiting us at the house, and things slowly began to heal. I moved in with Grandpa for good, transferring to a local college so I could be there for him. We fell into a comfortable routine. Coffee on the porch in the mornings, gardening in the afternoons, and old movies at night. The house was full of life again, a quiet, steady rhythm of two people who genuinely loved being together. He taught me everything, about finances, about managing a property, about the history of every nook and cranny of that beloved house. I wasn't just his companion anymore. I was his student and his partner. Sometimes when I'm pulling weeds in the garden, I think about that Christmas dinner. I think about the look on my aunt's face. It's not shocking anymore. It's just a somber reminder that family isn't a birthright. It's a choice you make every single day. It's in the phone calls you make and the care you give. Grandpa didn't just give me a house. He taught me that true inheritance isn't about what's left to you, but what's left ** you. And he left me a legacy of love, loyalty, and the quiet strength to do what's right. For that, I will be forever grateful. For my birthday, my stepmom gave me a clearly used, stained sweater while my step-siblings got the newest iPhones. She probably figured I'd just say thank you and swallow my feelings. I mean, that's what I'd always done. Just smile, absorb the quiet humiliation, and move on. But she made one huge mistake. She didn't realize I was about to unbox her thoughtful gift on Facebook Live for our entire family to see. They gave me a dirty sweater. I gave them a viral post. It all blew up on my 21st birthday. A milestone, right? A day that's supposed to be about celebrating your entry into adulthood, surrounded by people who love you. For me, it was the day the slow-burning flame of resentment finally roared into an inferno. It was the day I stopped being the quiet, compliant stepdaughter and started being the one who held up a mirror to the ugly truth of our blended family. Because our family wasn't blended. It was a hierarchy, and I was permanently at the bottom. Let me paint you a picture. My dad, Mark, is a good man at his core, I think. Before he met Corinne, he was my everything. We were a team. After my mom passed away when I was little, it was just the two of us against the world. He taught me how to ride a bike, helped me with my terrible algebra homework, and always made me feel like I was the center of his universe. There was a warmth in our little two-person family, a comfortable silence that only comes from really knowing someone. Then when I was 12, Corinne entered the picture. At first, she was all sunshine and sickly sweet smiles. She brought her two kids, Chad and Tiffany, who were around my age. Dad was so happy, so alive again, that I wanted to be happy for him. I tried. I really, really tried to embrace this new, instant family. But blending was never really on Corinne's agenda. It felt more like a corporate takeover. She acquired my dad and our house, and I was just a piece of the original furniture she had to figure out where to put. The signs were subtle at first, little comments here and there. "Oh, your hair is so unique," she'd say, her eyes scanning my curly hair, the same untamable hair my mom had. When I'd ace a test, she'd offer a tight-lipped, "That's nice, dear," before launching into a 10-minute monologue about Tiffany being named captain of the cheerleading squad. Slowly it dawned on me. I was an outsider in my own home. It's that feeling so many stepkids talk about, that outsider syndrome, where you constantly feel like you're on the fringe of the real family unit. Inside jokes would fly over my head. They'd reminisce about vacations they took before my dad was in the picture, and I'd just sit there, stirring food around my plate, feeling totally invisible. My dad, bless his conflict-avoidant heart, seemed completely oblivious. He was so caught up in the glow of his new life that he didn't see the shadows creeping into mine. The favoritism wasn't just emotional, it was tangible. You could track it in dollars and cents. The summer Chad turned 16, he wanted a car. Not just any car, a Jeep Wrangler. Corinne and my dad discussed it, which meant Corinne presented her case, and my dad, desperate to keep the peace, agreed. I remember sitting at the top of the stairs, listening. I heard Corinne say, "He needs it for his social development, Mark." Chad got the Jeep. 2 years later, when I turned 16, I brought up a car. I had a part-time job and had saved up a couple of $1,000s. I wasn't asking for a Jeep, just help finding a reliable rust bucket to get me to my job and back. The response: Corinne sat me down for a serious talk about financial responsibility. "It's important you learn the value of saving," she said, her voice dripping with fake wisdom. "We think it would build more character for you to earn it all yourself." My dad just stood in the doorway, wringing his hands and nodding like a bobblehead. He wouldn't even look at me. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Chad's car was social development, but mine was a character-building exercise in public transit. This is classic favoritism, justifying unequal treatment with flimsy excuses that always benefit the golden child. Then came the vacations. The year before all this, the four of them went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, the excuse for leaving me behind. My summer internship, the one I had worked my butt off to get, was too important to interrupt. They sent me postcards of sunsets while I ate instant noodles in my dorm room. The sting wasn't about missing a trip. It was the message, loud and clear. You are not essential. The family functions and even thrives without you. It wasn't just the big things. It was the 1,000 daily paper cuts. Corinne would forget to buy my favorite cereal but come home with 3 kinds of protein bars for Chad. She'd gush over Tiffany's new dress, then glance at my jeans and t-shirt with a little sigh of pity. These small acts pile up. They chip away at your sense of worth until you start to believe the unspoken message. You are not as valuable. You are not as loved. My dad was a willing accomplice in his own way. Whenever I tried to gently point out the difference in treatment, he'd get this pained look. "Oh, honey, Corinne doesn't mean it like that," he'd say. "It's natural for her to be different with her own kids." But that natural favoritism is what breeds resentment and drives families apart. He refused to see it because seeing it meant he'd have to do something about it. And my dad's #1 priority was avoiding a fight with Corinne. My feelings were just collateral damage. So, leading up to my 21st birthday, I wasn't expecting a parade. My expectations were so low they were scraping the floor. I was just hoping to get through the day without a fresh wound. Oh, how naive I was. The party was at our house, of course. Corinne loved playing hostess, showing off her perfect home and her perfect family. The air was thick with the scent of her expensive candles and forced cheer. The whole clan was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Gift time was, as always, a full-blown production. Corinne orchestrated it like the MC of the world's most awkward awards show. First up were Tiffany and Chad, who also had birthdays that month. Corinne made a big speech about her 2 amazing, brilliant children. Tiffany went first, tearing open a sleek white box to reveal the brand new iPhone. She squealed, hugging Corinne and my dad. "Oh my God, thank you." Then Chad, he opened his, and what do you know, another identical iPhone box. He gave a cool, entitled nod. "Sweet, thanks." 2 top-of-the-line phones, probably over 2 grand combined. The family oohed and awed on cue. Then it was my turn. The festive mood seemed to drop 10 degrees. Corinne picked up a small, lumpy package wrapped in what looked like leftover Christmas paper from 3 years ago. It was limp and sad, the tape peeling at the corners. "And of course, a little something for our birthday girl," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she handed it to me. It felt light, flimsy. It was a soft, squishy packet of disappointment. I held it in my lap, feeling every eye in the room on me. My dad was suddenly fascinated by his shoes. My cousins were trying to look anywhere but at me. They all knew. They'd seen this show before. My heart was pounding. This was it. The moment I was supposed to perform my role, the grateful, uncomplaining stepdaughter. I was supposed to tear it open, pull out whatever pathetic second-hand thing was inside, and say with a convincing smile, "Oh, thank you so much. You shouldn't have." But as I sat there, that lumpy package felt like the physical weight of a decade of being treated like an afterthought. It was the ghost of the missed vacation, the echo of the character-building car lecture, the sum total of every single backhanded compliment. I looked at Corinne's smug face, waiting for me to play my part. I saw my dad refusing to be my advocate. I saw Chad and Tiffany already lost in their shiny new phones. And in that moment, something inside me just snapped. The part of me that had always swallowed the hurt and kept the peace, it just died. It was a quiet rebellion. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. I forced a brittle smile. "Thank you so much," I said, my voice strangely calm. "You know what? I think I'm going to save this to open a little later. Savor the moment, you know." Corinne's face flickered with confusion. This wasn't in the script. "Oh, okay, honey, if you want." I tucked the package beside me, a small bomb waiting to go off. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. I was not going to open it there. I wasn't going to let them watch me be humiliated and then pretend it didn't happen. Not this time. This time, the unboxing would be on my terms. I mumbled something about a headache and excused myself. I could feel Corinne's suspicious eyes on my back as I walked away, clutching my pathetic little gift. I went straight to the guest bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub, my hands shaking. For a moment, I considered just throwing it in the trash. But that's what I'd always done, wasn't it? Thrown away my hurt, my anger, my sense of injustice. And where had it gotten me? Hiding in a bathroom on my 21st birthday. With a deep breath, I tore off the cheap paper. It revealed a wadded-up ball of fabric. It was a sweater. A faded, pilled, acrylic blend sweater in a truly nauseating shade of beige. I held it up under the fluorescent light. It was so much worse than I could have imagined. This wasn't just a cheap sweater. This was a used sweater. There was a dark, unmistakable coffee stain near the collar. The cuffs were frayed. The fabric under the arms was discolored. And then I smelled it. A faint, cloyingly sweet floral scent. Corinne's perfume. The one she bathed in every single day. She hadn't even bothered to wash it. A wave of cold washed over me. This wasn't thoughtless. This wasn't just cheap. This was contempt, a deliberate act of disrespect. She had reached into her closet, pulled out an old, stained sweater she didn't want and wrapped it up. It was a gesture that said, "You are worth less than nothing to me. You are worth the garbage I was going to throw out anyway." I sank onto the bath mat, the hideous sweater in my hands, and just felt empty. This was my value, a stained, used sweater. While her kids unwrapped the latest tech, a symbol of status and connection, I got a piece of her dirty laundry. The contrast was so cruel it was almost funny. I sat there for what felt like an hour, thinking about all the times I had made excuses for them. And then the anger finally arrived. Not a hot, screaming rage, but a cold, sharp, and intensely focused anger. An idea began to form. Corinne was always terrified of a scene. Everything had to look perfect on the outside. Her perfect house, her perfect husband, her perfect children. And that's when it hit me. She wanted to humiliate me privately. So what if I unboxed it publicly? What if I showed everyone, not just the people in the living room, but our entire social circle, exactly how thoughtful she was? The plan unfurled in my mind with a beautiful, terrible clarity. Facebook Live. Our family was all over it. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Corinne's own siblings. She loved posting about her perfect life on there. It was her stage, and I was about to hijack the performance. A giddy, nervous energy filled me. I pulled out my phone. A text from my dad flashed. "Are you okay?" Corinne's worried. I ignored it and opened Facebook. My finger hovered over the Go Live button. This was it. A point of no return. Airing family drama online is messy. It can burn bridges. But what bridge was I even trying to preserve? The one where I was constantly being walked all over. That bridge was already a ruin. Maybe it was time to light a match. It's funny, you read about this stuff, parental favoritism and how it can seriously mess kids up, but you never think you're living it. But what Corinne was doing wasn't just mean, it was damaging. And my dad's silence was complicity. That settled it. I propped my phone against the mirror, took a deep breath, and looked at the ugly sweater one last time. The coffee stain was my star witness. Before I tell you exactly what happened when I pressed that live button and the explosion that followed, do me a favor. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is for you. And trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. I hit the red button. You are now live. I took a second, letting my face fill the screen, trying to look composed. "Hey everyone," I started, my voice even. I know it's a little weird to go live on my birthday, but I just received such a unique gift from my stepmom, Corinne, and I had to share it with all of you. The viewer count started to tick up. 1512. An aunt's name popped up. A cousin, Corinne's sister, perfect. The audience was assembling. So as you know, it's my 21st birthday, and we just did presents. My step-siblings, Chad and Tiffany, got the new iPhones. Super awesome for them. I paused, letting that sink in. And Corinne got me something special too. I held up the sad, lumpy package, which I had rewrapped for the camera. I wanted to wait to open it to really savor it. So I thought, why not share the moment with all of you? I began to unwrap it slowly, theatrically, as comments rolled in. Happy birthday. What is it? I finally pulled the sweater free and held it up to the camera, letting it hang there in all its beige, pilled glory. It's a sweater, I said, my voice thick with fake enthusiasm. Wow, just wow. I brought it closer to the camera. Let's look at the details. It's so vintage. It has that wonderful lived-in feel. I then zoomed in on the coffee stain. And look, it even comes with this beautiful, organic-looking brown accent right here. That's so fashionable. A little pre-distressed. I love that. I kept a dead serious expression on my face. It's so thoughtful because now I don't have to worry about spilling anything on it. The pressure's off, you know. The comment section was shifting from birthday wishes to shocked face emojis. My cousin Sarah wrote, "Is that a stain?" I pretended to read her comment. "Oh, Sarah's asking if this is a stain. No, I think of it more as a birthmark. It gives the sweater character. It tells a story." I then lifted the sweater to my nose and took a deep, exaggerated sniff. Oh, and the best part. You guys can't experience this, which is a real shame, but it smells familiar. I looked directly into the camera. It smells exactly like Corinne's perfume. It's like she gave me a wearable hug. She must have worn this just for me before she wrapped. Edit. The dam broke. Corinne's own sister, my Aunt Carol, commented, "Corinne, what is this?" My Uncle Mike, "Is this a joke?" Then the text I was waiting for flashed at the top of my screen, from my dad, "Take this down now." I ignored it. "You know," I continued, my voice taking on a more serious, wounded tone, "it's my 21st birthday, and getting a gift that is so clearly from the heart, and from the back of someone's closet, it just really makes you feel seen, valued." I looked down, mustering a little quiver in my voice. While my step-siblings are FaceTiming on their brand new iPhones, I have this tangible piece of history, and I had to thank Corinne publicly for reminding me of my place, for giving me this reality check, gift wrapped in a used sweater. I ended the live stream. It was less than 3 minutes. I sat in the silence, my heart hammering. The phone immediately began to buzz, a furious, incessant vibration. The bomb had gone off. The first call was my dad. I let it go to voicemail. So were the second, third, and fourth. The fifth was from Corinne. Ignored. My phone was having a meltdown of notifications. I scrolled through the comments on the video. It was a war zone. Aunt Carol, "Corinne, I am so disappointed. Call me." My cousin Sarah, "I am so sorry. That is not okay." A high school friend, "OMG, I can't believe she did that. Happy birthday, though." Even one of Corinne's friends commented, "There must be a misunderstanding." Then I opened my texts. "Dad, answer your phone." "Dad, I mean it. You are embarrassing this family." "Dad, what were you thinking? You've humiliated your stepmother." My thumbs flew across the screen. "Really? I humiliated her," I typed back. "She gave me a dirty sweater for my 21st birthday while her kids got iPhones. Who humiliated who? He replied instantly. It was a mistake. She grabbed the wrong gift bag. You need to take the video down and apologize. The wrong gift bag excuse. It was so lazy, so obviously false. It was an insult to my intelligence. I didn't even bother to reply. Then a call came in from my grandmother, my dad's mom. I answered. "Honey, are you all right?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "I'm fine, Grandma." "I saw your video," she said carefully. "Your father is fit to be tied." "I'm sure he is," I said with a bitter laugh. Was it really that bad?" "Grandma," I said, my voice cracking. "It had a coffee stain on it. It smelled like her. She pulled it out of her closet." There was a long silence, then a heavy sigh. "Oh, Mark," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "That woman has him so turned around. I am so sorry, sweetheart. No one should be treated like that." Hearing her say that, the tears I was holding back started streaming down my face. The rest of the night was a blur. Corinne sent a long, rambling message about how I had misinterpreted her vintage find. She didn't mention the stain. Chad texted me, "You're a psycho." Tiffany, surprisingly, said nothing. The next day, my dad showed up at my dorm, looking exhausted. He tried again, this time talking about family unity and forgiveness. "Dad," I finally said, cutting him off. "This isn't about one sweater, you know that. This has been going on for 10 years. This was just the final straw. Where have you been this whole time? Why have you never, not once, stood up for me?" He had no answer. He just stood there, a portrait of a man who chose the path of least resistance for so long he forgot how to find his way back. I told him I wasn't taking the video down. It was my truth. It was the evidence. If they were embarrassed, it was an embarrassment of their own making. He left, defeated. It's been a few months now. The video is still up. It became a small-town legend. My relationship with my father is strained. We exchange polite texts. He's still with Corinne, but something in him has changed. The last time we spoke, he said, "I'm sorry, I should have seen it." It wasn't enough, not by a long shot, but it was something. Corinne blocked me on all social media. I consider that a win. Chad still thinks I'm a psycho, but Tiffany, in a move that shocked me, sent me a message a few weeks later. "I'm sorry," it read. "She's done stuff like that to me too, just in different ways. It wasn't right." It was a tiny crack of light in the wall of dysfunction, a hint that even the favored child feels the pressure. Some people think I went too far, that I should have kept it private, but privacy was the problem. The shame was meant to be private. Making it public was an act of reclaiming power. It was my way of saying, "You don't get to hurt me in the dark anymore. I'm turning on the lights." My little act of revenge might not have fixed my family, but it freed me from my role in it. I am no longer the girl who smiles and swallows her feelings. I'm the one who serves reality checks. So I have to ask you, what would you have done? Was I wrong to go public, or was it a justified act of defiance? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories about navigating life's drama, make sure you're subscribed.